Screen ଦେଖାଉଛି ମୋ screen ଦେଖାଉଛି
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
okay. So today before starting philosophical foundations of ethics I thought ki जो question दिया दिया है those two questions are actually very deep questions and they are also actually part of philosophical foundations. Okay, so maybe I don't know if you have realized this or not, but these two are the core parts of ethics or core concepts of ethics, and if you understand them your answer will also be richer. So ଆମେ ତା ବିଷୟରେ ଟିକେ ଡିସ୍କସ୍ କରିବା and ଏଇଟା ବି ବହୁତ ମେଜର କ୍ଲାସ୍ ବି ନେଇପାରେ, ତ ଠିକ ଅଛି। ଫାଉଣ୍ଡେସନଟା ମେ ବି ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ କ୍ଲାସକୁ ଏକ୍ସଟେଣ୍ଡ କରିଦେବା। କଥା ହଉଛି ଫାଉଣ୍ଡେସନ ଅଫ ଏଥିକ୍ସ ଆଉ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ଇଣ୍ଟ୍ରୋଡକ୍ସନ, ଏଇ ଦୁଇଟା ପାର୍ଟ ତମେ ବୁଝିଗଲେ not only will it help you in section A, section B ର ବି case study ଗୁଡାକୁ ବି ତମକୁ solve କରିବାକୁ easy ହେଇଯିବ। Okay, so that is my perspective. Then each and individual chapter ବି ଆମେ take up କରିବା, for example attitude and aptitude, so ତା ଉପରେ ବି ଆମେ content ଦେଖିବା, ସବୁ କରିବା, no issues, but ଏଇଟା ତମର strong ହେଇଗଲେ ଏଇଟା କଣ ହବ ନା ethics ର ପୁରା framework ଟା build ହେଇଯିବ। Okay, so let's go to the first point. usually ଦେଖିବ ସବୁ class ଏଇଠୁ start କରନ୍ତି, what is ethics? बहुत ही बोरिंग जिनस कहीं तुमको पचारिबेनी, डोंट वरी। मे बी ओपीएससी जदि ए वर्ष स्टार्ट करूची एथिक्स पेपर, इट्स पॉसिबल कि गोटे क्वेश्चन गोटे बिट रे पचारि दो, बट अदरवाइज आई रियली डाउट इट, बट ठीक अछि। व्हाट इज एथिक्स? सो द ओरिजिन कम्स फ्रॉम द ग्रीक वर्ड ethos, which means character, habit, customs. Okay, in any case if you are unable to remember any standard definition, then you can also make a definition of your own. We had discussed about that also, but in general let us see what are the standard definitions. The standard definition says that ethics is a set of standards that help guide our thoughts, choices and behavior. Usually in most textbook you will see only this part, you will only see behavior, but I thought that these should also be a part. Okay, this is my modification of the definition. Thought bhi amar havar hai. For example, it might happen that coincidentally your behavior seems ethical, but there is no intent behind it, माने तुम्हारो good intent न था कि भी ହେଇଗଲା coincidentally, है ना? तो should we say कि that person is ethical? कही हब नहीं। तो our thought, choices and behavior. Choices means sometimes how do we know कि some person is ethical or not? देखो तुम्हें बहुत rich थिबो and you got an opportunity for corruption, you denied it, then we don't know whether you are actually corrupt or not. But if a poor person is able to withstand the lure of corruption, bribery, then we know for sure that that person is a very ethical person. Why? Because choices. Actually, if you see, that person did not have any choice because he needs money, but despite that he refused the bribe. So that means choice will also reflect your ethics, है ना? And behavior तो एटा तो standard जिनसे जानती हो। Okay, so thoughts, choices and behavior, set of standards. Then this is another standard definition, study of human actions. Again, see, in all the standard definition you will see only this word, actions, but I will tell you ki apart from action, choices and thoughts will also reflect your morality. So the study of human actions from point of view of right or wrong, or rightness or wrongness, that is the definition of ethics. Now come to the major part, or this is the core point of our discussion. What are the sources of ethics? That is, where does ethics come from? How do we know which course of action is correct or not? So let's try to understand. I have seen many of your copies. Some people have described a few points, which is fine. But today we are going to study it a bit more systematically, and we are going to understand where does morality come from. Now, there are various arguments. कौन argue करा हुए कि ethics कोडू आसला? सबुटो simple and I will say most crudest form of argument is that it comes from God or religion. See, another part you can also argue ki religion, but I thought that the better thing to say is God. So some people would say ki why does religion exist itself? To serve some certain kind of God, or to from that kind of context, or in the worshipping of one kind of God you would have one kind of religion. Okay, despite saying ki, okay, all gods are same, why do you have so many different religions? Because we have different practices, different beliefs. So we come to the main source, that is we are saying ki there is a God. And in ethics, rather than using this term God, what we usually use is divine lawgiver. And there is a very famous saying, there can be no law without a lawgiver. Means যদি lawgiver নাই তার law কুয়াড়ু আসিব. So think of this perspective. if think of today's laws, ଆଜିର ଯାହା ବି ଆମର countryର law ଅଛି, ଏତେ law giver ମାନେ କିଛି ଥିଲେ ବୋଲି ତ law ଟା ଆସିଲା ନା। constitution ଯାହା ହେଲା, ଦେଖ ଆମର entire legal framework that is based on the constitution, and where did the constitution come from? The constitution came from constitutional makers. That's why we will say ki they are the law givers. Okay, so it's a separate matter. आमे तापरे technicalities भितरକୁ ଯିବାନି कि parliament will is also now making law. The point is parliament itself came from constitutional setup itself. So in that sense, if there is no lawgiver, how can there be a law? Now you think, if this is the case of modern India or any modern civilization, in ancient civilization there was no parliament, no constituent assembly, but still there was morality or not? So where did that moral or divine law come from? We'll say that that law came from maybe some divine lawgiver. So this is an argument key. There is some sort of sky wizard who have given us some law. So he is saying ki, he or she is saying ki, so this is the law, you should obey. And not all of us have heard him or her. Some people claim that they have heard him or they have seen it, that God has spoken to him or something like that. Okay. Now this on the saying of this person, and may not be only one person, it might be many persons. Now they have written some books and we are calling them as holy texts. And on the basis of holy text, with or without modifications, usually with some modifications, now we are having some kind of religion. And we are now saying that, okay, this is the basis of our ethics. So now can you tell me, is there any issue with this argument, or is this argument watertight? बहुत ही भला argument एटा कि ना किसी issue अछि कोन भाबुछ तमे को जनरल लॉजिक रू भाबी को
Not watertight, sir.
कोन issue अछि एतरे भाबुछ तमे
सर जेमती कि केत जगह customs जोटा माने religion impose करছে that is not ethically correct.
very good, but point
So
is ki
there is
how
no
do we
point
know that yes
so
कोन
there is no way to authenticate that some persons have
excellent
actually heard that.
excellent, that is a very sound counter argument. That first katha we suppose one person is saying ki I got divine revelation. This is the meaning of revelation. The reveal hela some kaha ko kiछि gote divine way re. Okay. Suppose some person is saying ki mu ratire swapno देखिली मते आसी भगवान कहले कि तमे 10टा लाइन लिखि दे लोकन को ए 10टा काम करा हेले तमे भल खुशी रहइबो whatever, or I want that you should obey these laws. Now the point is, how will we check that that person is telling the truth? We have no way to know it. It's a separate matter that many people will believe him. He might be believable. But we are not talking about whether someone is believable or not. We are talking about whether someone is some fact is correct or not, whether it is true or not. So how do we know? We don't know. Divine inspiration ହେଇଥିଲା କି ନ ହେଇଥିଲା ଆମେ କେମିତି ଜାଣିବୁ? They are claiming, we don't know. It might also be misperception. Misperception ମାନେ କଣ? ମାନେ ଦେଖ ହେଇପାରେ କି ସେ ଲୋକ ମିଛ କହୁ ନାହିଁ, but ହେଇପାରେ କି he really believes it, but he is somehow deceived. For example, think of a medical case. Someone is hallucinating. So hallucination ଯାହା କହୁଛି ସେ କହୁଛି ମୋ ସାମ୍ନାରେ ଏଠି ଗୋଟେ ସାପ ଅଛି or ଏଠି ଗୋଟେ ବାଘ ଅଛି. Now if you put a lie detector test to him, ତାର ବାହାରିବ କି ସେ ସତ କଥା କହୁଛି. But does that mean ki that snake or that tiger exists? It doesn't mean it. Even if he is not lying, he believes it to be true, but it may not be necessarily true. Now again, see, in ethics class you have to be very open minded. Please don't get offended. Okay? This is a class of ethics. This is not a generic class. So we have to keep an open mind, and we have to see and examine arguments from both sides of the aisle. Please don't get offended. Now the third point is that sometimes it also leads to deification of humans. What is the meaning of deification?
To consider
Deification.
humans as gods.
Yes. ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କୁ ଆମେ ଭଗବାନ ବୋଲି ର ଦର୍ଜା ଦେଇଦଉ ହେଲା, ତାଙ୍କୁ ଏତେ ବଡ କରି କହିଦଉ. Suppose one person says କି ମୁଁ ଭଗବାନଙ୍କ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ କଥା ହେଲି, ସେ ମତେ ଏମିତି ଏମିତି କହିଲେ, then there will be 10 number of followers in our country. They will start to not only worship God but also gradually start to worship this person. I'll tell you a very funny story. Manoj Daskar बहुत ही funny story थी, just in brief. So there was one very nice person, spiritual minded. He joined an ashram. There was one guru. So Guruji कौन कले? Guruji कहले कि हम meditation करिया. So he was trying to teach meditation. So after some time that person left. बहुत वर्ष पर से आश्रम को return कला, and he saw that that guru is now dead, and many of his disciples are now meditating. But he saw a very curious thing, ଯେତେବେଳେ meditate କରୁଛନ୍ତି ସେ ସମସ୍ତେ କଣ କରୁଛନ୍ତି, ପ୍ରଥମେ ଗୋଟେ ବିଲେଇକୁ ଆଣିକି ବାନ୍ଧିକି ରଖୁଛନ୍ତି, ତାପରେ meditate କରୁଛନ୍ତି. So he was very astonished. He asked କି କଣ ଏଇଟା କୋଉ ପ୍ରକାର ମାନେ meditation? Then those persons said କି ଆରେ ଆମେ ଦେଖିଛୁ ଆମ ଗୁରୁ କଣ କରନ୍ତି, ଗୋଟେ ବିଲେଇକୁ ବାନ୍ଧିକି meditate କରନ୍ତି, ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ଜାଣିଲୁ କି ଏଇଟା ହଉଛି this is the way. Then that person realized what happened was that ସେ ଗୁରୁଙ୍କର ଗୋଟେ ଛୋଟ ବିଲେଇଟେ ଥିଲା. Okay, and when he was meditating ସେ ବିଲେଇ ଆସି ତାଙ୍କୁ disturb କରେ. So ଗୁରୁ କଣ କହିଲେ, ବିଲେଇଟାକୁ ବାନ୍ଧିଦେଲେ meditate କରିବା time. Now these disciples they did not understand କି କଣ ହଉଛି. They thought that this is a requirement. ଏବେ ଜବରଦସ୍ତି କିଛି ବିଲେଇଙ୍କୁ ଜବରଦସ୍ତି ଆଣିକି ବାନ୍ଧିକି ତାଙ୍କୁ meditate କରିବାକୁ start କରିବେ. Now what is the meaning of this story? The meaning of the story is that many times people don't understand why, what is the reason. This is the, if you see, this is the entire point of moral reasoning na? I had told you one thing, in case study it is not important, many times it is not important what stand you are taking. What is usually important key, what is the moral reasoning you are giving to justify it, correct? Similarly, if you are deifying humans, what is the justification? By deifying humans, what will you achieve? So that is the problem with divine lawgiver, that many times it is intended to be something but ends up in something else. Intended to be X ends up in being Y. Okay. Similarly, you see holy text. ଯାହା ବି ଆମର holy text ଗୁଡ଼ା ଅଛି. What is the point of
Sir,
having them? Yes.
sir, in the previous point, can you give examples, non-controversial, ମାନେ ସେମିତି କିଛି example ଯଦି ଆପଣ କହିପାରିବେ, କାରଣ କିଛି ତ
ନା
ଦେଲେ
ଦେଖ, ଏ
ମାନେ
ଷ୍ଟୋରି ଭରିର ଏକ୍ସାମ୍ପଲ ତ
ନା
ଦବାର
ଷ୍ଟୋରି ନ
ସ୍କୋପ ହିଁ ନାହିଁ ତମ
ଡେଇଫିକେସନ ଅଫ
ପାଖରେ.
ହ୍ୟୁମାନ୍ସ, ଡେଇଫିକେସନ ଅଫ ହ୍ୟୁମାନ୍ସ
ଡେଇଫିକେସନ
କି
ଅଫ ହ୍ୟୁମାନ୍ସ କଣ୍ଟ୍ରୋଭର୍ସିଆଲ ହେଇଯିବ.
ତ ଓନ୍ଲି
ଆଶ୍ରମ
ଖାଲି
ବାପୁ
ସେଇଟା,
ଟାଇପ
ତ ସେଇଟା ଖାଲି
ନା
ମେନସନ କରି ଛାଡିଦବ ତ?
ୟେସ୍ ମେନସନ କରି ଛାଡିବ, ଡୋଣ୍ଟ ରାଇଟ୍,
ଓକେ
ମାନେ ବହୁତ ବେଶୀ ଡିଟେଲ ରେ କହିଲେ ବି you don't know whether the examiner is of what mind. Okay, examiner
yes
might
yes
be very spiritual kind of person. He will say कि अरे कौन एମାନେ ସବୁ ଲେଖିଛନ୍ତି. He or she will not understand कि these are all very well known ethical arguments. Okay, so we don't know at which what kind of examiner is checking. So ଆମକୁ କଣ, ଆମକୁ ବस point ବାହାର କରିବାର ଅଛି. I'm trying to show you one point. Okay, now next see holy text. Holy text ରେ କଣ ଅଛି, ବହୁତ ଭଲ ଜିନିଷ ଗୋଟେ ଅଛି, do's and don'ts ଅଛି. Means this is also do's and don'ts ମାନେ କଣ, ethical code of conduct. By the way, this is also one term, code of conduct, that we will read later on. Okay, ଆମର ଅଛି ଆଗକୁ ଏଇ term ଟା ଆସିବ ଆହୁରି. So for the time being understand that most of the holy text will say କି ଏଇଟା କର ନାହିଁ, ଏଇଭଳିଆ ସବୁ ଲେଖା ଅଛି. But problem, what is the problem? Many of the do's and don'ts might also have expired. Many of the limitations or many of the things that they are talking about might not be applicable to our times. Okay. Why? Because they are the products of their times. Many of these have been written maybe hundreds, maybe 1,000 years ago. Maybe time change ହେଇଛି, so many of those advices might not be applicable. See, majority of them might be applicable, that is a separate thing. But we are saying that if you are claiming it to be holy, then there might be a problem that if some aspects or some lines are taken out of context or even maybe applied 100%, it might create some kind of problem. Many textbooks have, sorry, holy texts have very controversial provisions. Okay, so people can justify n number of things using them. Okay, even if you want, you can justify violence using, I'm telling you, you can justify violence using almost any textbook of the world of any major religion. Okay. So they might be products of their times. We can also argue that we have misunderstood them. That's a different point. Similarly, we will say that it clashes with the modern or liberal views, because if you see most of the holy texts, if you see, they were of traditional or conservative bent of mind. Some of them, some provisions might be liberal. I'm not doubting it. Okay. For example, in Buddhism, there is a thing. Uh, it is said that if any Buddhist ideology will not match the progress of time, then Buddhists will have to discard that ideology. It's a separate matter that most of them don't, but there is a provision. Okay. So we are saying that sometimes it clashes with modern or liberal views. You can take a major religion of the world. We are not naming it, but we all know some religions have very illiberal views on many controversial topics. For example, gender rights, women rights. है ना? Many religion will say that will have many provisions which will now be seen as against growth or against modern or liberal views. And again, if you take up any religious textbook, there would be a number of provisions which can be used against this. Okay, so you don't have to be even be selective about it. But the point is, what is also one key point or utility of holy text is that they have a role in regulating societies. Okay, and this is the main part. Many people would justify it on the ground that okay, chalo holy text रे जहाँ लिखा ଅଛି ସେ ସବୁ ସତ ନ ହେଇପାରେ, but they are useful. Now try to understand this distinction. Something being truthful and something being useful. Maybe they will say कि okay चलो ଆମେ मानि नवा कि ଯାହା ଲେଖା ହେଇଛି ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ସତ ନାହିଁ, but at least ସେଥିରେ ଲୋକ ବିଶ୍ୱାସ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ବୋଲେ society ଟା ଭଲରେ ଚାଲିଛି ନା. So that argument, another argument for this is given ki what is the problem of not having a divine lawgiver? What is the problem of not having a God? The problem is, as Dostoevsky once said, he was a very well known writer, if God is dead, then everything is permitted. ଯଦି ଭଗବାନ ହିଁ ନାହାନ୍ତି, ଓକେ, ତାହେଲେ ତ ସବୁଥିଙ୍ଗ ମାନେ ତୁମେ ଆମେ ମୋରାଲ କାହିଁକି ହବା, ଆମେ ଏଥିକାଲ ହବାନି. ଓକେ, so there is a role in regulating societies. By the way, on this topic itself, we can have entire one class on this also. But anyway, today we are not going to go very deep into this. Then second, again, try to understand, it also has limited or local application. Many of the holy texts, if you see, not only are they products of their times, they are also products of their places. In the sense, got a local region, many of the provisions you will see related to that region only, which will not apply to other regions. For example, it is said that why there is a system of parda in Islam, because it started from that Arabic region, or actually first it was an Abrahamic religion which started from Egypt. Okay, but it became very popular in the Arabic region, and even from Egypt, from where it started, that was Sinai desert of Egypt. Okay, so usually it initially grew in desert areas. If it is spreading in desert areas, how will people dress? People will usually cover their faces to protect themselves from sand. So it is said, see, I'm not justifying it, I'm not saying that this is the truth, but there is an argument ki the reason that we have such covering and all parda system is because of the local geography. But when it spread to other areas, now you think of the same thing in Malaysia, for example, Malaysia, Indonesia, these are also Muslim majority countries. Now someone will argue that why are you now following the same tradition as in Saudi Arabia or in Egypt? You don't have to follow because now your geography is different. But that's the issue with religion. The issue with religion is that ଯେମିତି ସେ ବିଲେଇ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ ହେଇଥିଲା meditation କରୁଥିଲେ disciple ମାନେ, once religion codifies something, then it becomes difficult for its followers to break it. It becomes very very difficult. Okay, it's not just because of religious doctrine or anything. There are many psychological and sociological aspects to it also. Okay, so we can say that holy texts usually don't have universal application, or not all the provisions don't have universal application. Many of the provisions will have local application. So on this ground, you can sometimes say that okay, this seems logical. You can also counter argument with our କରିହବ कि नहीं, God की divine lawgiver argument ଟା ठीक ନୁହଁ. Okay, it's not possible that because of God is we have ethics. Now similarly think counter argument ମୁଁ କିଛି example ଦେଇଛି. Now you compare countries with different levels of religious beliefs. Okay, ଆମେ କହିବା in general what is the level of religious beliefs in one country. Okay, what is the point of this? The point of this is this assumption that if a country is sorry, the assumption is that if you are saying that religion is correct or somehow good, okay, then this would make people more ethical. If a society is more ethical, then we assume that it will lead to more development. If not directly, then indirectly कि एमिति गोटे environment, conducive environment create करा हबो which would be better for human development. Now you try to compare. Now based on this argument, try to think कि has this happened or not. Now you think of some country which has very low levels of religious beliefs. Countries like most of the Scandinavian countries, if you see, countries like Sweden, Finland, okay, they actually have very very low levels of religious belief. Most of the people there, almost 90% people are non-religious or irreligious. Many are atheists or agnostics who don't believe in God. But on the other hand, if you see countries with very high levels of religious beliefs. Countries like India, and even more than India, countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan. Okay.
Brazil.
Now you Brazil, na Brazil एते भी बेसी होगा. Okay.
Yes,
Brazil
sir.
somewhere
They are
middle
very
आसियो. Brazil Christian majority I know. There are
yes,
many
sir.
tribals also. These tribals you cannot claim that they are also Christians. They are what we call as pagans, and their religious belief. We are talking about level of belief is not that strong. Means they are not. We are talking about kete intensity raj. So Brazil will come somewhere in between. More than Brazil will be actually be India. India रे level of religious होने लोग तो पागल पूरा धर्म भाई. Now you see what is the level of, and yes, US would also be one of the lower side regime. So now we can say ki, is this argument applying to it? We will say that no, this argument does not take hold. So this can be one argument. That means ki religion, it's not necessary that religion would lead to development or peace or ethical society. This is the counter argument. It's not necessary. Now one can argue that these links are not very strong. That's a separate matter. But I'm saying that one counter argument can be made like this. Another counter argument, chalo it is controversial. Let's not talk about this. Divine North Korea. If you want, you can research this. Christopher Hitchens had said this. Okay? Problems of a divine North Korea. Now let's come to this. Yes, someone is asking something.
ସାର୍ ଗୋଟେ ରିକ୍ୱେଷ୍ଟ ହେଲା ସେ ଯୋଉ ଆପଣ ଲେଖୁଛନ୍ତି ସେ କାଳି ଟିକେ ଚେଞ୍ଜ କରିହବ କି କାରଣ ନୋଟ ସହିତ ମିଶି ଯାଉଛି ପରେ ଜାଣି ହବନି.
Okay. Let me turn this into blue. Okay. ଏବେ blue ହେଇଗଲା କିଛି ଅସୁବିଧା ନାହିଁ. Now let us discuss कि यार conclusion ଆମେ କ'ଣ କରିବା. यार conclusion ହବ कि only from this part.
Sir,
कि should we
sir से जो
yes
डिवाइन नॉर्थ कोरिया वाला पार्ट था मैंने एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू
ना
मैंने
ना
relevant
लेखनी नहीं
okay
लेखनी.
okay
If you want you can research on it, but ଛାଡ଼ ମୁଁ ଲେଖି ଦେଇଥିଲି then I realized कि
okay
ଏତେ explain କରିବାକୁ scope ବି ନାହିଁ. So come to this part कि should we be moral because of some kind of religion, or should we be moral because the sake of for the sake of goodness itself. If you are moral because of some promise of heaven or because of some threat of hell कि ଆମେ ଭଲ କାହିଁକି ନା ଭଗବାନ ଅଛନ୍ତି, ଆମେ ଯଦି ଭଲ କାମ କରିବା ତାହେଲେ ସ୍ୱର୍ଗକୁ ଯିବା, ଯଦି ଖରାପ କାମ କରିବା ନର୍କକୁ ଯିବା. ତ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ external motivation basis ରେ if you are being moral, or should you be moral because being moral is an intrinsic value itself. Now what do you think कि କୋଉ type ର morality ଟା better? You think and tell me.
sir intrinsic is better but initially some external motivation should be there because not everyone is equal in terms of their intellectual development.
Very good, this is an excellent point. ଏବେ ଆମେ ଏଇ point ଟାକୁ ପରେ ଆସିବା ହେଲା. moral development ଆମେ ଦେଖିବା କି ଲୋକଙ୍କର moral development କେମିତିଆ ହୁଏ. ତ ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ କହିପାରିବା କି ମେ ବି initially ଏଇଟା ଆମକୁ requirement ଅଛି. ଗୋଟେ ଛୋଟ ପିଲାକୁ ଆମେ intrinsic reason କ'ଣ ଦେବା, being good for the sake of goodness itself ତାକୁ କ'ଣ ବୁଝେଇବା, ତାକୁ ଆମେ କାନ୍ତର deontological ethics ତାକୁ ବୁଝେଇଲେ ସେ ପିଲା କ'ଣ କହିବ, ପିଲା କହିବ କି ମତେ ତ ମିଠା ଦରକାର, ମତେ ତ ଚୋରି କଲେ ଖୁସି ଲାଗୁଛି. So initially you would have to tell him or her something ki don't steal this or don't eat such kind of food, because if you do this there is some invisible god who is watching you who will punish you, and if you are doing some good things then he will reward you. So we'll say that initially this part is important, later on this part is important. As a person moves from a child to an adult and with education, we expect that the person would be ethical because of intrinsic reasons. Okay. Now let's come to this part only. Now we are going to discuss ki is being ethical part of human development. Okay. ଏବେ ଆମେ ଦେଖିବା କି okay चलो ଯେମିତି ଆମର human development ଯେମିତିଆ ହୁଏ. What is the meaning of human development? ମାନେ human development ର example ହେଲା, so from an infant to a child to an adult, okay, to an old man, so on and so forth. So this is what? This is physical development. Is there a similar ethical development? This is what we are trying to ask. ଯେମିତି ଏମିତି ଏମିତି physical development ହଉଛି ସେମିତି ଲୋକଙ୍କର କ'ଣ ethical development ବି ହୁଏ କି? Now actually there have been many theories who say that yes, that actually happens. So one person called Lawrence Kohlberg, researcher, he has given a very detailed theory ki how this development happens. He says that yes, ethics develops in people, but the point is it develops in stages. So it is called as stage theory. Stages ମାନେ ଗୋଟେ ପରେ ଗୋଟେ ଏମିତି stage ରେ develop ହୁଏ ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ. Okay. So there is a gradual development, and not everyone goes all the way up. Means ହେଇପାରେ କି କିଛି ଲୋକ ଏଇ ଷ୍ଟେଜରେ ଅଛନ୍ତି, କିଛି ଲୋକ ଏଇ ଷ୍ଟେଜରେ ଅଛନ୍ତି, କିଛି ଲୋକ ଏଇ ଷ୍ଟେଜରେ ଅଛନ୍ତି, ଏଇ ପୁରା ଟପ୍ ମୋଷ୍ଟ ଷ୍ଟେଜରେ ବହୁତ କମ ଲୋକ ଅଛନ୍ତି. Okay. So that means what? That means ki not everyone maybe has the same privilege. As someone said कि ହେଇପାରେ କି ଗୋଟେ ଲୋକର intellectual capability ସେତିକି ହେଇନାହିଁ ଯାହାର କି morality ଟା intellectual development ପାଇଁ ହବ. So maybe for that kind of people we need to have some extrinsic motivation. For example, law, for example, God will say that you should be good because if you don't, then we will punish you, we will jail you, or else even if we are not able to catch you, then God is watching you, you will suffer in your next life. Okay, something like that. So that person is what? That person is certainly not standing here. That person is standing somewhere here. And so this is what Kohlberg says: कि not every people have gone to the topmost level because it is a gradual process. Some people would say at one point at their entire life, how development हुई ही नहीं. Okay. Then he is also saying that it depends on the individual and social circumstances. Obviously, level of education, socioeconomic status. Now examine and just think. Maybe some people who don't have the privilege like you do. For example, someone who is working maybe on the streets. ତା ପାଖରେ ଏତେ level of education ନାହିଁ, ସେ କୋଲବର୍ଗର theory କେବେ ପଢି ନାହିଁ. It might happen that because of lack of education ତାର level of development ସେତିକି ହେଇନଥିବ. Although this is also a very controversial thing, whether education is the only thing which determines morality. You are not going to go into that. Okay. You will also see an example that there are many highly educated people who are immoral, and there are many lowly educated people who are very ethical. Okay. But the point is, does education have a link to ethicality or not? Ethics. Certainly it has. In general, it is seen that as a society becomes more and more educated, in general, I'm saying, usually the level of education goes up. Sorry, level of ethics in a society goes up. Because education is not just the education of the mind. As you are getting educated, somehow it will have also have an impact on your character. Okay. So Lawrence Kohlberg कौन कहले? Lawrence Kohlberg कहले, you can see this diagram. You will not have the scope to write all of these things. I'm just trying to explain to you कि so यार माने कौन? कोलबर कहले कि stages रे multiple stage रे हमर morality टा develop. First कौन हला? देखो gradual development केमती तळु ऊपर को जाउछ. First कहले कि Lawrence Kohlberg कि initially it is based on reward and punishment. Means there is an infant, ଗୋଟେ ଛୋଟ baby ଟେ ଅଛି. ତାକୁ ethics ଆମେ କଣ ବୁଝେଇବା? ତାକୁ ଜଣା ନାହିଁ କାନ୍ତର theory କଣ କିଛି ଜଣା ନାହିଁ. So what we will say ki if he or she is doing something bad, then we will either we will punish him. If he is doing something good, then we are going to reward him. So ଯଦି bed ରେ ଶୁଶୁ କରିଦଉଛି, then we will say ki we will maybe punish him. We will ମାନେ ଆମେ ସେଠୁ ଆଣିକି ତାକୁ କହିବା କି ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଜାଗାରେ ରଖିଦବା, ତାର demand କିଛି fulfill କରିବା ନାହିଁ. So the baby will understand ki this is something bad. And if he or she is doing something good, then we will reward. So the initially ethics टा केमते develop हुए the reward punishment basis रे. So the person is able to understand कि okay, this is good, this is bad. Then on the next stage, what it is based on self interest. Then the baby understand कि I can manipulate adults to get some of my desired things. For example, if I am being a good boy, then I will get some rewards. If I am being a bad boy, I will not get this reward. Okay. And slightly above this is pleasing others. Now यार आउ गोटे स्टेप ऊपर कौन अदर को आउ प्लीज करिया से ऊपर पड़ी जाइए कह कि मम्मी आज ना माने मते तुम सांगे भल लगुच पापा सांगे मत भल लगुन तुम सांगे भल लगुच because he or she knows कि now the mother will reward him or her. Then the next stage is something known as law and order. तापर तो स्कूल पाखा कि स्कूल एज हो पिलार. Now he will understand कि there are certain laws, rules which determine what is right and wrong. For example, traffic rules. Now you notice something. Now एथरे कौन हो पिलाटा को each and every stage रे समान को लागू थु कि maybe this is the final stage. They will understand ethics from only that perspective. So now at the traffic rules, for example, this person understand कि we should obey traffic rules. एटा स्कूल ले कोई class रे कोई is like okay, we should obey traffic rules. So suppose his father is speeding, he will say कि papa, you are speeding, traffic rules break होची, we should not do that. So papa will understand okay चलो बेटा करो किसी उठे ethical development होची. Now think of another thing. Suppose the father is carrying a sick child to the hospital. So for that he is breaking traffic rules. Now the father understands that what is of major priority here. The priority is that the life of my child. But it might happen that the same boy would say, Papa, you are again breaking traffic rules, you should not break. Because तार अंडरस्टैंडिंग से डेवलप ही नहीं कि लॉ एंड ऑर्डर ऊपर भी और किसी जिनस अछि sanctity of life itself is bigger than any law and order. Because if you see what is the purpose of law and order, law and order purpose होउछि आमे गोटे एमती कंड्यूसिव सोसाइटी क्रिएट करिया जोथरे कि समस्तंकर मैक्सिमाइज हे परियो तांकर लाइफ एंड लाइफस्टाइल एंड पर्पस व्हाटएवर दैट इज. The purpose of law and order is not that law and order is even greater than anyone's life, है ना. So that but the child will not understand because तार लेवल से केवल एतिक नहीं बुझी पता नेक्स्ट स्टेज रो डेवलपमेंट केमती हबो जेतल यूथ यंग एज को पळेबो एंड मे बी इवन एडल्ट एज देखो समस्त में समान न थाए डिफरेंट लेवल और डिफरेंट लोकंकर भी डिफरेंट एज रे ए मैच्योरिटी ता आसे नेक्स्ट एज रे दे विल अंडरस्टैंड की ethics is something which is a social contract. What is the meaning of social contract? It is a contract between parties who are living in the society, between you and me. Okay. So that means if you do good things to me, you can expect good things from me. If you do bad things to me, you can expect bad things. So this is also why they will start to have good number of friends. They will start to behave well with others because they understand that this is how we are going to operate. Okay. And finally, at the topmost level is something known as principle based. What is the meaning of principle based? This person has matured so much, and usually it happens in late adulthood. Now, this person will understand that not only are ethics based on many of these things, but या ऊपर भी गोटे किछि abstract principle एमितिया किछि अछि which may not be even in the law रे भी से जिंस नाही हमर, but still he will follow that principle because he will understand that this is the supreme thing. For example, sanctity of life, as I keep on saying, life is precious. He or she will understand this. He or she will understand that virtues like truthfulness, honesty, these are good in themselves. Okay. And these also exceed social contract. Now the point is, many people would not go to this point. Many people would also stay at this point. Now तांकर growth हुए नहीं. बहुत कम लोग अछंती जोटा कि complete ए level पर्यंत जान. And here you can give very good example of people like Gandhiji. Now this person and the best example for Gandhiji is breaking the salt law. Now you think at that time this law was prohibiting people from making salt in India. Indians माने करि परिबे नाही. Now he understood कि काहे करि परिबे नहीं एमती law काहे कला. So he understood that the law itself was unjust. The law was unethical. So when the law is unethical, then we don't have to obey the law. So what is the abstract principle that he was relying on? The abstract principle that Gandhiji was relying on, we can call it maybe PNJ, principle of natural justice. जेटा natural justice को violate करूची. एटा तुम्हारा polity class रे पढ़ा हो. In general जानो कि natural justice कौन? Naturally हमको जहाँ जाना पड़ुची कि एटा just होबो कि justice होची कि हो नहीं. Okay. So Gandhiji कहले कि जदि गोटे law एमती अछि which is unethical in itself, then we don't have to obey that law. So he had gone to, that means it shows that he had gone to this level. Okay. If you want, you can read this in detail. It is not at all required, not required. But I'm just telling you to make you understand that how morality develops. Okay. This is a very well-known theory of moral development. Okay. Now someone will say that ethics also develops due to society. We can also argue आमे कौन सब आर्गुमेंट दोचे आमे कहूचे कि किछि लोक कहउचंती कि गॉड पई किछि लोक कहउचंती नाइ सेटा तो नेचुरली आपे आपे डेवलप हुए लोकमान को भितरे थ्रू दीज काइंड ऑफ स्टेजेस किछि लोक कहउचंती कि नाइ किछि नेचुरल किछि नाइ सोसाइटी ही सब कराय. And this is also one of the natural arguments because if you see where do we usually, if you think about it, आमे ethics usually first principles काहाठो सिखु आम पेरेंट्स को सिखु. पेरेंट्स कहले कि नाइ एटा ठीक अछि कि एटा भूल अछि. फैमिली मेंबर्स देन ग्रेजुअली then our friends हम जते देखो जते पिला ने बॉडी बॉडी जाउछंती how what is the level of socialization तांकर केमती बॉडी बॉडी जाउ तांकर जो सर्कल दा आस्ते आस्ते एक्सपैंड ही जाउछ. Initially the infant only has his or her parents, then there is extended family and extended family, then he or she when they go to the school, then they have their friends or peers, then they will start working, then they have their co-workers, then there is a larger community they become aware of, then there is country or society. So this is, can you visualize this. This is like a concentric circle. In between here, it is the individual. So individual एमती केते गुडा concentric circle through रे society ताको socialize कर दूची. Therefore, they are known as agents of socialization. जहाँ through रे agents माने medium. कहाँ through रे से socialize होची. And based on this, there was a very famous theory given by a researcher called Bronfenbrenner, and his theory is known as Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems model. ମୁଁ ଏବେ ତମକୁ ଯାହା କହିଲି ଏଟା exactly ସେଇ same ଜିନିଷ. He or she, that Bronfenbrenner fellow is saying ki how the person, one individual develops through the interaction between such concentric circles. ସେ ତାର ଗୋଟେ fancy name ଖାଲି ଦେଇ ଦେଇଛି, microsystem, mesosystem, exosystem. You don't need to understand any of this. Just need to understand what is the concept. The concept is that देखो center रे individual ଅଛି, आस्ते आस्ते केमिति तार circle टा बढ़ी बढ़ी जाଉଛି, and each of them are agents of socialization for that person. And by socializing with all of them, his or her uh, psychological development also happens, a part of which is ethical development. बुझी होची? देखो गोटे क्वेश्चन भितर आमे केते डिटेल डेप्थ रे जाउछ. तुम्हें आंसर, फाइनल आंसर इज जो बुलेट पॉइंट रे लिखियो. डोंट हैव द स्कोप टू राइट अ लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स, बट द पॉइंट इज दिस अंडरस्टैंडिंग विल हेल्प यू इन अदर थिंग्स आल्सो. माने पूरा एंटायर एथिक्स सब्जेक्ट रे बहुत सारा भला आंसर लिखि पारियो. And these are also many of the terms that you should actually write. In the theory of moral development, you can just mention Kohlberg, then your answer will be very rich. Okay. Now come to this part. There is another part which is called as social norms. देखिया गले ये society under रे ही आसु. What is the meaning of social norms? The meaning of
Hello, sir.
social norm.
Sir.
Sorry. Yes.
हाँ सर. सर ये जो concentric circle वालाटा ଅଛି तो ताको
हम्म.
हमें सेटा एग्जाम रे रिप्रोड्यूसिबल ना माने हमें जो एजेंट्स ऑफ सोशलाइजेशन खाली सेटा लिखियो कारण एटा तो लिखले
तुम्हें
आपको
देखो
किछि
एजेंट्स ऑफ सोशलाइजेशन एमती गारा रानी लिखिदेले किछि एक्सप्लेन କରିବାକୁ पड़िबନି.
हाँ
किंतु
सर
तुम्हें
एटा
दे
रे किंतु
ब्रॉनफेन
लिखियो
ब्रेनर,
पड़ो.
yes लिखिବାକୁ पड़िବ. So that's why I am saying कि for your own understanding only ମୁଁ ଏଟା କହିଲି. Otherwise if you want you can simplify this ना. एटाକୁ simplify केमतिया करियो, ଆମେ simply एमितिया लिखिदवा individual, तापर एठी लिखिया family, तापर एठी लिखिया कि school, तापर आ गोटे सर्कल कर देई, तापर एठी लिखियो workplace, है ना. तापर एमति further एपटे लिखियो society, तापर लिखियो nation. And it is all of this is operating on the basis of time. Growth is there also on the basis of time. So, simply ये diagram भी तुम कर परियो, एटा बेस समय लागियो नाही. And तळे लिख परियो कि human development theory by Bronfenbrenner. If you want you can do it, but again ମୁଁ କହୁଛି ବହୁତ ଅଧିକା ହେଇ ଯାଇ ପାରେ, मे भी କିଛି
Okay.
ପିଲାଙ୍କୁ complicated ଲାଗୁଥିବ. So it's up to you. If you want, if any of you can do it, I'm telling you will get extra marks, ଭଲ ମାର୍କ ପାଇବ. Because literally the point I'm telling you ना, तुम्हारा ethics रे की हो कि एथरो GS रे, you don't have that much competition this time. ठीक है, let's come to social norms. What is the meaning of social norms? Meaning होची society रो norms. Norm माने जोटा normalize कर दिया है जो जिंस. It might be some kind of practice, some kind of what else can we say, some kind of social ideas. Okay? These are called social norms. Society रो normal, society रे जो जिंस को normalize करा है and maximum लोग जहाँ को follow करते. For example, we can say कि what are the social norms of India. India रो generic social norms कौन? It have cultural differences. We'll see. All of these can also be linked to cultural differences. But for the time being, you can say कि many of the social norms of India, for example, is always being late, है ना. Usually देखिथियो एटा कुहा जे Indian Standard Time IST. कुहा हेतियो 6टा बेले पिलाने पहुंचे 6:15 6:20 रे. गोटे इवेंट ऑर्गेनाइज होतुओ कुहा हेतियो कि समस्ते 7 PM will start. People know by that by default केबे 7टा रे कुहा हेसी कोन 7टा रे स्टार्ट होबी. स्टार्ट हो 8टा हे जीवन. Is this not an example of social norm? Yes, it is. Means in our society it has been normalized. But think of a society like maybe US or Britain, or maybe in a society like Scandinavian society. There, if you are invited to come to a party or come to somewhere at 7,
Japan.
Japan is excellent example. they are very particular, very punctual. ତାଙ୍କ train ଯଦି ମାନେ 1 minute late ହେଇଯିବ, for that the railway department will apologize, है ना? So now think that is this not there is a difference between India and other countries or not? And is this also not developing our sense of ethics? ଆମର ethicality या द्वारा भी develop होଉଛି. Many people, if you suppose ଆମ class ଯେମିତି start ହେଲା, I am not going to give example, but some people also made a few undue requests without considering ki, whether it is doable by the faculties or not. Anyway, we did not accept any of them. Some of them said ki okay chalo pila request କରୁଛନ୍ତି, you can do it. So chalo we said ki okay, we will do it. But point is ki we don't realize ki what we are mane, accepting, or sorry, what we expect from others. So that is also how your level of ethics also develops. So can we say what is the level difference between level of ethics of maybe an average Indian and an average maybe American or British? Okay. That is see, it's a very debatable topic. एतरे बहुत argument बहुत आस्य. But will in general say कि social norms of our country maybe in many aspects we need more development. है ना? And because of these social norms, our understanding of ethics has also developed accordingly. Only recently I was seeing that many देखिए social media post ଆସିଥିବ, କିଛି post କଣ ହେଇଥିବ କି କିଛି women ମାନଙ୍କର suppose କିଛି actress ମାନଙ୍କର କିଛି photo ଆସିଲା, then there will be very bad kind of comments. Whereas the same thing, if it is done by the male actors, there will be different kind of comments. Male actor hele, that will be called as okay, he or she is very dabang kind of, you know. But if the same thing is done by any actress, then that is bad, unethical. So who set this ethical standard? Social norms only, na. Same thing you will not see in maybe, or maybe to that extent you will not see in other societies. So that is why you are saying ki this is an aspect of ethical development. Now I'm going to tell you a better example, and this will come from the example of cultural differences, difference in cultural values. And generally, if you see, usually researchers have divided such kind of differences into two kinds of societies. One is called individualistic cultures, one is called collectivistic cultures. For example, cultures like India, Japan, okay, we are known as collectivistic cultures. If you see individualistic cultures, usually the Western countries. The cultures in the Western country, they are more individualistic. What is the difference? Means the individual is more important there. Whereas in India, the collection or collectivity or the society or the community, that is more important. And for that, for the benefit of community, maybe the individual rights will be trampled upon. So ଯଦି ଆମେ discuss କରିବା କି କିଛି ଗୋଟେ ଆମେ scheme କରିବାକୁ ଯାଉଛୁ, କିଛି ଗୋଟେ କାମ କରିବାକୁ ଯାଉଛୁ, we will say କି, hang on a second, we will say କି if it is inconveniencing a few people, then ठीक ଅଛି ତାଙ୍କୁ ହବାକୁ ଦିଅ, but what is more important, society or community, है ना? So we will go on doing that. But in Western countries, the same individual can challenge it. Legal protection ଅଛି, cultural protection ଅଛି କି ତାଙ୍କର individual right is much more important. So this is a cultural difference. If you go into detail, ଏଥିରେ ଆହୁରି ବହୁତ difference ଅଛି. You will see, for example, collectivistic culture ରେ କେମିତିଆ, what is the level of morality, and individualistic culture ର morality କଣ? For example, collectivistic culture ରେ morality ସବୁ ଏମିତିଆ ହବ which will serve the purpose of the society. Individualistic culture ରେ morality ସେମିତିଆ ହବ which serves the mainly the purpose of the individual. For example, the values like freedom, that is much more important for individualistic societies. But for collectivistic cultures, what is more important is that the development of the community. It is more important that social harmony is more important. Okay. So that is the difference. Ethical value, co-value को हमें बेसी importance दोचे. That also depends on the culture. Okay. Now come to this part. Now we'll go to a slightly different part. We will try to understand कि whether ethics is innate. Innate ର ମାନେ कौन? Innate ର ମାନେ होची inbuilt or inborn in us, or is it learned? Means एटा हमर already हम भितरे थाए ना एटा हमें बाहरु सिखु कि कौन जिनसटा order ठीक कि भूल. तो यार आर्गुमेंट innate side रो आर्गुमेंट ପାଇଁ ये सब आर्गुमेंट दिया जाए, तापर हमें देखियो कि learned side रो कौन आर्गुमेंट दिया जाए. କିଛି ଲୋକ ଯୋଉ
सर
କହୁଛନ୍ତି
एटा
କି
सोर्सेस रो मान जो एथिक्स रो जो सोर्सेस थला सेटा
यस
सेगमेंट
यस
टा खत्म हो गेल
ना ना
ना एटा
सॉरी सॉरी
सिर्फ
तार
अच्छा
एक्सटेंशन यस तार
ओके
एक्सटेंशन हिज एथिक्स देखो सोर्सेस ଆମେ ସେଇଟା ହିଁ କଥା ହଉଛୁ सोर्स କୋଉଠି ହବ କିଛି ଲୋକ କହୁଛନ୍ତି सोर्स ଆମ ଭିତରେ ହିଁ सोर्स ଅଛି କିଛି ଲୋକ କହୁଛନ୍ତି କି ନାହିଁ ଏଥିକ୍ସ ର सोर्स ଆମ ଭିତରେ ନାହିଁ ଆମ ବାହାରେ ଅଛି दैट इज द डिफरेंस ଆମ ଭିତରେ ଅଛି ମାନେ दैट इज इननेट ଆମ ବାହାରେ ଅଛି ମାନେ दैट इज लर्न्ड ମାନେ ଆମେ ଶିଖୁଛୁ ବାହାର सो व्हाट इज द आंसर वी आर गोइंग टू सी ଯୋଉମାନେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି କି ଇଟ୍ ଇଜ ଇନନେଟ୍ ଟ୍ରାଇ ଟୁ ଅଣ୍ଡରଷ୍ଟାଣ୍ଡ କାହିଁକି ସେମାନେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି କି ଆମ ଭିତରେ ହିଁ ଅଛି ଗୋଟେ पर्सपेक्टिव ହଉଛି ଇଭଲ୍ୟୁସନାରୀ पर्सपेक्टिव these people are saying कि ଆମର इवोल्यूशन ପାଇଁ ହିଁ ଆମର ethics ଆସିଛି now you will think it is very strange कि evolution ର ethics କେମିତି ଆସିଲା correct can you think of how କେମିତି ହେଇଥାଇ ପାରେ କି guess କରି କହିପାରିବ although ଭାବିବାଟା difficult but still you think
सर
human
क्वेश्चन टा
evolution
होता
ପାଇଁ ଆମେ evolution ପାଇଁ ethical ହେଇଛୁ ବୋଲି କେମିତି how can we justify it because of human evolution we have become ethical can we
रिसोर्स
justify it
रिसोर्स अनलिमिटेड ଥିଲା रिसोर्स कन्जर्व କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଏଥିକାଲ
excellent this is one very good excellent answer who is this Devchandan or who
ସାର୍
is this okay yes
ସାର୍ ଆଗରୁ ଆମେ ହଣ୍ଟର କରୁଥିଲୁ ଏବେ ଆମେ ସୋସିଆଲାଇଜ ହେଇକି ଅଛୁ ସେଟା ତ ଇଭଲ୍ୟୁସନ ହେଲା ନା
very good so you are saying कि hunter gatherer ରୁ ଆମେ evolve କଲୁ towards sociology चलो
ସୋସିଆଲାଇଜ
ଏଟାକୁ ଆମେ କହିବା agricultural ରୁ industrialist ଯାହା ବି development ହେଲା but for that how did our ଆମ ethics କାହିଁକି
सर
develop
निजे
କଲା
सेफ्टी ପାଇଁ
okay
Sir,
excellent point survival of the fittest
survival of the
excellent
fittest concept.
how did it impact ମାନେ ଆମ ethics କୁ କେମିତି shape କଲା ଏଟା
Sir, ଆଗରୁ କିମ୍ବା ଆମର ପ୍ରି ଇଣ୍ଡିପେଣ୍ଡେନ୍ସ ରେ ବହୁତ ଅପରେସନ ଥିଲା ଆମ ସୋସାଇଟିରେ ତ ସେଠୁ ଆମେ ସର୍ଭାଇଭ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ରିଭଲ୍ୟୁସନ ଷ୍ଟେପ ସବୁ ନେଲୁ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଓମେନ ହଉ କିମ୍ବା ଏଜୁକେସନ ହଉ ତ ସେଠୁ ବି ଆମେ ଏଥିକାଲ କଣ୍ଡକ୍ଟ ପାଇଲୁ କି ଆମେ ଏଜୁକେଟେଡ ହବା ଦରକାର ଓମେନ ଏମ୍ପାୱରମେଣ୍ଟ ହବା ଦରକାର ଲିଗାଲିଟି ଆମ ହ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡରେ ଆସିବା ଦରକାର ତ ସେଟା ବି ଗୋଟେ ପ୍ରକାର ମେ ବି ଏକ୍ସାମ୍ପଲ ହେଇପାରେ
ନା ସେଟା totally ହବ ନାହିଁ because evolution here means through a very very long time it is we are not at all talking about um, pre-independence evolution सामने किसी नो if you see the history geological time scale if you see ଆମ 13.7 billion years ago ଆମ universe create ହେଲା 4.4 billion years ago earth create ହେଲା if you think of that time as one entire day for maybe around 20 hours out of 24 hours the earth did not even had a life 20 ଘଣ୍ଟା ପରେ ଲାଇଫ ଷ୍ଟାର୍ଟ ହେଲା ମୁଁ ଗୋଟେ ତୁମକୁ ଗୋଟେ ଇମେଜରୀ ଦଉଛି and maybe ତାର ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଘଣ୍ଟା ପରେ ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ ଇଭଲ୍ଭ ହେଲେ ଡାଇନୋସର ଆସିଲେ ଏ ସବୁ ଆସିଲେ ଆମର ଫାଇନାଲ ଯୋଉ ଲାଷ୍ଟ ଯୋଉ ଭାବ 300-400 ବର୍ଷର ଇଣ୍ଡଷ୍ଟ୍ରିଆଲ ରିଭଲ୍ୟୁସନ ଯାହା ବି ହେଇଛି ହ୍ୟୁମାନ ମଡର୍ନ ସୋସାଇଟି ଆସିଛି that is only the last second means ଆମର the entire earth history ଗୋଟେ ଦିନ ନିଆ ହବ in the evolutionary time scale this entire history of the earth sorry history of modern history is only 1 second last second ରେ ହିଁ ଅଛି that means ki that cannot be the evolutionary perspective in the sense goes back to millions of years ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମ human species evolve କରୁଥିଲା ତ anyway ଏଇ ସବୁ କିଛି point these are valid points okay I will tell you another perspective ବହୁତ ହି ଭଲ ଭଲ points ସବୁ ବାହାର କଲା I will give you another perspective ହେଲା yes someone was saying something
Sir, can you say that through evolution, like our languages or societal practices also evolved, which is also a source of ethics?
language ର evolution itself ମାନେ ଦେଖ point ଟା ବୁଝ evolutionary perspective means evolutionary perspective here directly does not translate into language cultural values directly এটা translate ହୁଏ ନାହିଁ indirectly এটা ଆମର existential crisis through ରୁ ଆସେ we'll try to understand ହେଲା existential crisis through indirectly ଏସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ଆସିବ but evolutionary perspective here means something which has evolved for a very very long period of time now language ର evolution ବହୁତ ବେଶୀ ସେଇ time scale ରେ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ଗଲେ ବହୁତ ବେଶୀ time ରେ ହେଇନି ବହୁତ short period ଭିତରେ relatively ହେଇଛି for a very long period of time we were ମାନେ language ସେତେ ବେଶୀ develop କରି ନଥିଲା okay so anyway let's try to understand କି କଣ ୟାର ମାନେ କଣ evolutionary perspective ମାନେ କଣ I'm only giving you one of the main arguments evolutionary under ରେ ବହୁତ ସାରା argument ଅଛି ତୁମମାନଙ୍କ ଭିତରୁ କିଛି ଭଲ ଭଲ point ବାହାର କଲା I'm giving you another major argument the argument is why should we be ethical because it aids our survival, ଆମର existence को aid करे, ଆମ species ର existence को aid करे। यार माने कौन देखो, माने भावो दुईटा species अछि, suppose one species is human species, another species is, think of it, maybe dinosaur species, okay, some other species. Now if the human species is being ethical, means they are protecting each other, they have a community values, and suppose dinosaur मान को say ethics नहीं, who is more likely to survive? Humans are more likely to survive ना। It is a separate matter कि human माने dinosaur मान को time limit नथिले, आमे से technicalities भितरु जाऊ ना, and it is also another matter कि this is also not the main reason why the dinosaurs went extinct. I am just giving you an example कि we are trying to think, could ethics have evolved out of evolution? And these ethical, see, evolutionary scientists, they have said कि yes, it can. केमिति ସେମାନେ justify करछन्ति, ସେମାନେ कहछन, suppose take an example of killing. If आमे gradually केमिति understand करले कि killing टा होछि गोटे immoral or unethical जिंस, because if any species is killing itself, if it is killing other species, then it is food. If it is माने food माने कोन, माने ସେମାନେ तांकर species टा ही grow करियो, ए species टा down हो, so we are talking about आमो species रो growth. But if you are killing your own people, then that species is not likely to survive. So from that we understood कि okay, chalo, killing is not good. Similarly, think of stealing. Any civilization which will normalize stealing, can that civilization exist? That civilization will gradually fall into despair, that will fall into some kind of chaos, and out of chaos would lead to many kind of disasters, man-made disasters, and they will likely disband, or they will likely gradually go extinct. So what about the famous line ଅଛି, ଗୋଟେ Latin verb, sorry, Latin phrase, it is called as odo ab chaos. This means order out of chaos, means, and this is the, it is said that this is the rule of life, order out of chaos. Initially there would be chaos, but then you will gradually understand that what we require is order. In fact, if you see entire civilization, I mean, look, when civilized kahin kiyale, because initially hunter gatherer society there was a lot of chaos, then we became civilized when we brought this order into our society. So is this not the growth of ethics itself? Yes, it is. This is the journey of ethics, from chaos to order. Chaos कौन, chaos माने होची, you are allowed to do whatever you want, तुम लोगों को चाहे मार दियो, तुम भाई बहनों को मार दियो, किसी कर दियो, everything is allowed. So that is chaos. What is order? Order is that when you understand कि okay, so there are some things you cannot do, you should not do. So this is one example of ethics. Sorry, one of the sources of ethics, evolutionary argument. Now there is another argument that it is also our natural tendency. People like Rousseau, okay, they are also known as the romantics. ଏମିତି କାହିଁ ନାଁ ଦିଆଯାଇଛି, because they are said कि they are romantic about ethics. ସେମାନେ ରୁସୋ ଟାଇପ ର କିଛି ଫିଲୋସୋଫର ଥିଲେ ଯୋଉମାନେ କହୁଥିଲେ କି ହ୍ୟୁମାନ ବିଙ୍ଗସର ନ୍ୟାଚୁରାଲ ମାନେ ନେଚର ରେ ହିଁ ଅଛି ଏଥିକାଲ ହବା। ରୁସୋ ଗୋଟେ ବହୁତ ହି ଅଜୀବ, ମାନେ ୟାର ପୁରା ଅପୋଜିଟ କଥା କହିଲେ। ଏବେ ଆମେ ଦେଖିଲେ ନା ସୋସାଇଟି ହଉଛି ଅର୍ଡର ହବାକୁ ଆମକୁ ସିଭିଲାଇଜ ହବାକୁ ଆମକୁ ଅର୍ଡର ଦରକାର, କେଓସ ରୁ ଅର୍ଡର। ରୁସୋ वाज द ଅପୋଜିଟ पर्सन, ହି ଜଷ୍ଟିଫାଇଡ ଇଟ ଇନ ଦ ଗ୍ରାଉଣ୍ଡ। ସେ କହିଲେ କି ଇନିସିଆଲି, ମାନେ याକୁ कहते नोबल सैवेज, he said कि initially we are all, माने हम मतलब wild रे born ହେଇଛୁ, wild रे brought up ହେଇଛୁ, those people are more ethical than people who are so called civilized. He said कि these civilized people are actually unethical. And so what is he arguing? He is arguing that it is our natural tendency to be ethical. He is saying that ethics तो ଆମ जीन नहीं ଅଛି, ଆମ ମାନେ जीन तो से कहि नथिले, स्पेशली ethics ଆମ ଭିତରେ already natural tendency ଅଛି, rather civilization ତାକୁ ଖରାପ କରି ଦଉଛି। So is this also not an argument कि ethics टा हमर innate अछि बोली? Also an argument. Now it's a separate thing कि से सेटा prove करि पारले नाही। But Rousseau is also a very big philosopher and he was one of the leaders of the so called romantics. Okay. हमको खाली further point दरकार, हमको इतने सारा description दरकार नहीं। You can just write natural tendency, then you will write that in bracket Rousseau or the romantics. You will not find any of these points in any standard textbook, in any ethics coaching center material. In general, if you Google these you will find. Okay. The point is, I have assembled all of these different points under different arguments. Okay. Now next, see what is the role of genes. आमे एथिक्स रे को इनेट कथा हबा यस
सर नेचुरल टेंडेंसी भलसे बुझी हेलानी टिके आउथरे कहि
से कहले कि नेचुरल टेंडेंसी माने कोन देखो हमर नेचुरल टेंडेंसी हमकू व्हाट इज आवर नेचुरल टेंडेंसी फॉर एग्जांपल यू विल से कि सपोज इफ इट इज आस्क्ड टू यू कि ह्यूमंस को नेचुरल टेंडेंसी कोन तो कि से मते त लागु ह्यूमंस को नेचुरल टेंडेंसी होची सेल्फिशनेस कि से माने चाहउचंती तांको सब जिंस मिल जा बिकॉज़ दैट इज हाउ वी बिहेव मेनी ऑफ अस बिहेव बट ऋषभ उल्टा कथा कहले ऋषभ कहले कि नहीं नेचुरली जो माने बोर्न एंड ब्रॉट अप हिता नेचुरली हम भीतर टेंडेंसी था कि वी आर एथिकल because he gave example of for example babies जो माने बहुत simple society रे tribals they are very simple so he said that this means that we our natural tendency होची हम भलो हवा किंतु को लोक माने wicked और खराब को माने जो माने सिटी रे रहउछन so he said कि देखो otherwise जो माने adult they are more wicked than the children पिलान का माइंड तो पूरा क्लीन था है ना तो जेते बड़ हबो सेते खराब जिंस भी सिखियो तो सी तार एग्जांपल दे कहली कि सो दिस मीन्स दैट नेचुरली हम पकरे भलो जिंस थाए किंतु आमे सोशलाइज कि हम खराब ही एते बहुत डीप जिंस सेंते किछि नाही ही जस्ट गिव सम एग्जांपल्स एंड चलो एटा भी यार भी बहुत काउंटर आर्गुमेंट अछि इट इज नॉट कंसीडर्ड टू बी अ गुड आर्गुमेंट बट एनीवे वी कैन मेक वन पॉइंट आउट ऑफ इट कि वन पॉइंट की व्हाई एथिक्स इज इननेट नाउ नेक्स्ट इज द रोल ऑफ जीन्स नाउ एबे कोन एबे रोल ऑफ साइंटिस्ट माने एथरे आसिल द प्रॉपर साइंटिस्ट माने आसिल जो माने पूरा जेनेटिसिस्ट से माने बहुत रिसर्च करी कहले कि it is possible that through mechanisms which are biological mechanisms it is possible that through biological mechanisms also that ethics has developed for example Richard Dawkins is a very well known biologist okay ताकर गोटे बही अछि बहुत well known बही the selfish gene so he actually gave the idea of if you see today's आज जोड़ा meme को होछि ना this term was actually given by Richard Dawkins and it was given in a very different sense तापर तारो ताकू यूज कराला गोटे अलग सेंस से कहले कि जेमती आम जीन टा प्रोपागेट हुए फ्रॉम वन जनरेशन टू अनदर जनरेशन सिमिलरली जीन टा कौन जीन टा गोटे बायोलॉजिकल जिंस देयर इज आल्सो ए कल्चरल एलिमेंट कल्चरल आइडियाज concepts okay these also transmit from one generation to another and also within that generation also transmit and this idea is known as meme ତେଣୁ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ରାପିଡ ଟ୍ରାନ୍ସମିଶନ ହୁଏ ସେଇ ଆଇଡିଆରୁ ଆଜିର ମିମ୍ ଆସିଛି ଆଜିର ମିମ୍ ର ମାନେ କଣ ଯୋଉଟା ରାପିଡଲି ଆମେ ସବୁ ସ୍ପ୍ରେଡ କରୁଛୁ ଚାରିଆଡେ ଆଇଡିଆ ଯୋଉଟା ସ୍ପ୍ରେଡ ହଉଛି है ना ଦି ଅରିଜିନାଲ କନସେପ୍ଟ वाज गिवन बाय रिचर्ड डॉकिंस he said कि ଯେମିତି ଜିନ୍ ଗୋଟେ ଜେନେରେସନ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଜେନେରେସନ କୁ ଯାଏ which is biological similarly cultural ideas cultural values cultural references okay these also transmit ଏଗୁଡା ବି ରବି transmission हुए for example just take one example of आजकल एटा बहुत चलची जेंडर जस्टिस और फॉर एग्जांपल जेंडर रिलेटेड सो मेनी स्टफ है ना किछ लोग तांको सोशल जस्टिस वॉरियर्स कहउछन जे सब जिंस रे माने सब जेंडर सब कथा रे जेंडर नहीं है दे आर वेरी दे गेट समटाइम्स ऑफेंडेड आल्सो एंड दे आर वेरी वोकल अबाउट मेनी जेंडर राइट्स स्पेसिफिकली फॉर एलजीबीटीक्यू कम्युनिटीज नाउ ही गेव वन एग्जांपल कि देखो एटा केते शॉर्ट ड्यूरेशन ने मे बी 5 to 10 years भितर केते वाइडली एटा पॉपुलर हे गला लोकन भितर व्हाई one of the main reasons was because of this concept meme it spread a lot not only from one generation to another but mostly even within that generation these are cultural values or ideas है ना? Now what is the point under role of genes Richard Dawkins under role of genes said that many times it is our genes which lead us to behave in ethical ways जीन केमती ethical way रे behave करियो कहयो Richard Dawkins said that there are many genes which will compel you towards self preservation okay and how can you self preservation माने आमे निजर प्रोटेक्शन केमती करे आमे निजर प्रोटेक्शन बेस्ट केमती कर परिया जते हम गोटे भलो सोसाइटी थियो which will help us now to in order to ensure that this society is there to protect us we also have to give something back to this society or not so from this mutualism develops the idea of ethics that means आमे भलो हबा अन्य मान को एथि पई बिकॉज आमे जानछु कि आमे तांको माने आमे तांको प्रति यदि भलो हबा से माने भी आम प्रति भलो हेबे एंड ता द्वारा आमर सर्वाइवल दिस विल एंश्योर आवर सर्वाइव एंड फॉर दैट वी आर जेनेटिकली प्रिपेयर्ड हम जीन ही इटसेल्फ हमको बाध्य करे भलो हबा पई दिस इज व्हाट ही इज सेइंग बट द प्रॉब्लम टू दिस आइडिया इज दैट तापर एतल साइंटिस्ट माने तापर रिसर्च करे लागले तापर साइंटिस्ट माने कहले अच्छा इफ दैट इज दिस इज द केस then what we usually see is that for many functions of our human body there are specific genes है ना किछि जीन एमितिया अछि जोटा कि से जीन को जदि तुम म्यूट कर दो माने से जीन को यदि उड़े दबो और सप्रेस कर दो ताले ह्यूमन बीइंग कर सर्टेन फंक्शन गुडा बंद हो और एबनॉर्मल हो सो फ्रॉम दैट वी अंडरस्टैंड दैट ओके चलो ए जीन टा होची ए फंक्शन संगे रिलेटेड आई एम गिविंग एन एग्जांपल देयर आर सर्टेन जीन्स इन योर बॉडी जदि सेई जीन गुडा को हम देहरो बाहर कर दिया जाए ताले हम बॉडी रो कोन इंसुलिन तयारी करिया बंद कर दो है ना सो ए साइंटिस्ट माने कहले जेमति कि सर्टेन फंक्शन रो सर्टेन स्पेसिफिक से वाला जीन अछि सेमिति आई एथिक आमे एथिकल होबा बोली कोन कॉरेस्पोंडिंग जीन अछि कोठी एटा अछि हमको देखाओ ना नो वन कैन शो इट कि एग्जैक्टली ए जीन टा अछि एटा को हमें देखि परिया ओके सो इफ यू आर नॉट अनेबल टू शो कि ए जीन टा अछि या पे रेस्पोंसिबल देन यू विल से कि ओके चलो सेमिति जीन किछि ही नाही ओके दैट इज द काउंटर आर्गुमेंट दैट देयर इज नो स्पेसिफिक जीन फॉर एग्जांपल दिस इज द एग्जांपल गिवन कि तुम्हें को कि अल्ट्रुइज्म माने कोन अन्य को हेल्प करिया सेल्फलेसली अन्य को हेल्प करिया से कहले तुम्हें देखाओ कोठी ये अल्ट्रुइज्म जीन हम देहर को जगह रे अछि देखाओ केही देखै पारना दिए सो दैट मींस जीन सेमतिया किछि नाही अच्छा एठी गोटा पॉइंट मु लिखि जेनेटिक लोसाई इट्स नॉट रिक्वायर्ड एट ऑल बट दिस इज वन कांसेप्ट कि समटाइम्स देखो हमें कहीं एटा लिखि जी बिकॉज़ ए जो क्वेश्चन आसला ना कोठी जीन अछि पर्टिकुलरली देखाओ बेले बेले पॉइंट ये हो कि गोटे सिंगल जीन न थाए बेले बेले बहुत सारा जीन मिसी की सेपरेट सेपरेट जगह रे थिबे together they are exerting an influence or an effect which leads to certain kind of behavior and these set of genes are known as genetic loci or gene loci loci आमे से सब भितरु जीवानी बहुत पर्टिकुलर जिंस जस्ट डिड यू वर यू एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड और नॉट कि इनेट वाला किछि ए सब जिंस कहउछन कि इवोल्यूशनरी पर्सपेक्टिव अछि नेचुरल टेंडेंसी अछि जीन रो भी रोल अछि त एई सब कारण जो आमे कहउछु कि we are saying that maybe ethics is innate means ଆମ ଭିତରେ already ଅଛି but the counter argument to this is some people are saying कि no it is not innate it is actually learned means ଆମ ଭିତରେ ନାହିଁ ଆମେ ବାହାରୁ ଜିନିଷଟାକୁ ଶିଖୁଛୁ ତ କିଏ କହୁଛି ଏ ଜିନିଷଟା learned ବୋଲି देखो जो लोक माने कहे सोशलाइजिंग एजेंट्स को इंपोर्टेंस देबे सोशलाइजिंग एजेंट्स किए थे मन पकाओ
family, parents,
Family,
school,
parents,
education.
school.
वेरी गुड फैमिली स्कूल कोवर्कर्स ए माने सब थिले ना तो सेमानंको कहया कथा कि एई माने ही हमको सिखौचंती कि व्हाट इज एथिकल व्हाट इज अनएथिकल सिमिलरली एंड ऑफ कोर्स यू विल सी फैमिली फर्स्ट हमको को जिंस ठीक भूल किए सिखाए हमको फैमिली ही सिखाए बापा माँ माने फॉर एग्जांपल पेरेंट्स हमको कहे कि नहीं एटा करो सेटा करो बिकॉज़ दिस इज एथिकल दिस इज अनएथिकल दिस इज राइट एंड रॉन्ग ସେମାନେ starting ରେ ethical unethical ର ତ concept ନଥାଏ ସେମାନେ right and wrong କୁହନ୍ତି which is the first step of ethical development that is what we are saying similarly ତାପରେ ଆଉ ଟିକେ ବଡ ହେଲା ସ୍କୁଲ କୁ ଗଲ suppose ସ୍କୁଲ ରେ ତମେ ଗୋଟେ ଚୋରି କରିଦେଲ ତୁମେ ସାଙ୍ଗମାନଙ୍କୁ ସାଙ୍ଗମାନେ ଜାଣିଗଲେ ତାପରେ ସାଙ୍ଗମାନେ ତମ ମଜାକ ଉଡେଇଲେ from that also you understood कि this is not a good thing co-workers suppose ମାନେ without even knowing suppose you misbehaved with one of your colleagues maybe if you are a male or a female साଙ୍ଗरे ଗୋଟେ ଖରାପ way ରେ କେମିତି behave କରିଦେଲେ you don't even if you don't know now this colleague will say कि don't you know how to behave with girls now you realize कि okay gender sensitization ହେଇଗଲା you have to behave maybe a certain different manner to different gender this is also a development of your own understanding है कि नहीं so this is how learned one aspect is this now another aspect is education and critical thinking very very important please mention this phrase wherever possible ଯେତେବେଳେ ବି moral reasoning କଥା ଉଠିବ please mention this phrase critical thinking critical thinking माने कौन देखो एजुकेशन एंड क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग आर नॉट द सेम थिंग है ना आमे आई थिंक गोटे को गोटे आंसर राइटिंग रे भी सब जिंस डिस्कस करथले कि नहीं एजुकेशन और समथिंग रो त माने ऑन द स्पॉट बोथे डेफिनेशन बाहर करथले त आमे कथा हिथि व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ एजुकेशन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट नॉट ओनली इट इज द एक्विजिशन ऑफ नॉलेज बट आल्सो इट इज द एबिलिटी टू जनरेट क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग एमितिया किछ आमे ऑन द स्पॉट डेफिनेशन बाहर करथले से दिन तो
Yes,
व्हाट इज
sir.
द मीनिंग ऑफ दिस क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग रो माने होची माने गोटा होची सुपरफिशियल लेवल ले सरफेस लेवल ले थाए क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग होची गोटे डीप लेवल ले जाई गोटे जिंस रो एक्चुअली मीनिंग कोन बुझिया एंड इट माइट बी अगेंस्ट व्हाट इज सुपरफिशियल लेवल लो अंडरस्टैंडिंग अगेंस्ट भी हिते पारे बट यू आर एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस ओके नाउ लेट मी टेल यू One example, let me tell you what is an example of critical thinking. Okay, now consider this point. Now tell me, should education be free or not? Now let us test your critical thinking. Should education be free or not? Completely free of cost. Okay, चलो एटा को तो बहुत इजी ही गला आ गोटे कथा हम कहया. Let us say should there be 100% welfareism. आमे कोन करिया ना, आमे सपोज आम बाहर करिया कि लोक मानकर डेली चलिया को केते टका दरकार आम बाहर करिया कि मे बी मासो 50,000 हेगले समस्त चली जिवे. आमे कोन कहया ताले कंट्री रे कंसोलिडेटेड फंड रे जते पैसा अछि 50,000 लेखा आमे सब फैमिली को दे देबा. एटा देले भलो हबो कि खराब हबो? टेल, let us test your critical thinking ability. और let us
Sir,
say आमे किछि जिंस फ्री करदा, पूरा कंप्लीटली फ्री करदा. ओके, let us say कि आमे वाटर को पूरा कंप्लीटली फ्री करदा. ऑल आर पोर्टेबल वाटर माने ड्रिंकिंग वाटर को समस्त फ्री रे दे देबा पाइप द्वारा.
सर जो
केदी
यूबीआई
एक्चुअली
केस आसिଥିଲା
sir,
यूनिवर्सल
complete
बेसिक इनकम
यस सिमिलर कांसेप्ट.
मिनिमम
सर वेलफेयरिज्म रे जो कहले जे कंसोलिडेटेड फंड रू देबा सेटा मे बी सेटा ये हे पारे माने सेटा ठीक नाही बट वाटर पोर्टेबल सेटा मे बी ठीक हे पारे.
सर
अच्छा
वाटर
यार गोटे सिमिलर,
क्या
बाय द वे लेट मी टेल यू. यस यस someone else has said.
सर
Yes,
वाटर मिनिमम चार्ज रखते फ्री
वाटर
रे
टा दवा
मिल
कथा
नहीं सर वाटर रे किछि मिनिमम चार्ज लगे माने रखा कथा सर
रखिया कथा. ओके, व्हाई?
माने बहुत वेस्ट वाटर
Excellent point. Waste हो. Can you give an example?
सर पंजाब
irrigation.
Yes, excellent example. पंजाब रे लोक मानकु ग्रीन रिवोल्यूशन पई गवर्नमेंट जेतेबेले इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बिल को सब्सिडाइज कर दिया गला, लोक माने दिन राती मोटर ऑन करी छाडी पळेले जमीरु. व्हाट वाज द इम्पैक्ट? इम्पैक्ट वाज द वाटर टेबल, ग्राउंड वाटर लेवल ताकर बहुत तळु खसी गला. एबे तांका पाखरे माने दे तरसुचन से माने इरिगेशन करिगेशन बहुत हरान होछन से माने. से जगह रे आउ किछि जिंस आउ बहुत सारा इश्यू बाहरला, सैलिनेशन इश्यू बाहरला, सॉइल रो क्वालिटी खराब गेला. Now, my point is not to go into details. I will tell you another thing. My point is, when you are making something free, people will not value it. The other aspect is, if you see it from another aspect, nothing in this world is free, except some things which are required for our sustenance. For example, oxygen, air. Okay, you can even say water. Normally, जो water available होची, that should be free. But why should potable water एटा करी process करी government सब लोगों को दबा and सेटा को हम free कर दा, minimum charge रखियन कौन हो तार wastage हो. If you understand from this point, there is no free lunch. Nothing in the world is free except mother's love. Okay. Everything else comes at a cost. The point is, actually we don't know what cost we are paying, but everyone is paying a cost. If you think many of these freebies, these are not coming free to the people. तुम्हें भाबो आज गवर्नमेंट जो फ्री रे किछि भी कर देला, चलो पॉलिटिकली सेंसिटिव जिंस हो, सपोज को भी गवर्नमेंट किछि भी फ्री रे कर दोछि, लोकन को सब नहीं जाओ, एटा फ्री हेगला सेटा फ्री हेगला, एनी कमोडिटी. Actually they are not giving the people this for free. It is coming at a huge cost. What is the cost? Can anyone tell me the cost that people are paying for that?
Power.
Very good. Not only power. See, तुमको आमे 10 टंकार गोटे जिंस को 0 टंका करी देकी आमे जो पावर को आसिलु, एटा 5 वर्ष पई तुम 10 टंकार जिंस 0 माने फ्री रे पाइलो. बट व्हेन वी केम टू पावर, नाउ आमे सब कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, गवर्नमेंट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नहीं गलु, करप्शन कलु, सब कलु, आमे यार माने 10,000 टाइम्स एक्स्ट्रा उठे देलु. Are you able to understand? Similarly, think of any such subsidy schemes. Huge subsidy जो उधर दिया हो. You think you are getting it for free or very less amount, but we are paying a cost. What is the cost for that? We are paying the opportunity cost. Opportunity cost एतरे या ची कि गवर्नमेंट ये सब फालतू जिनसे रो पैसा वेस्ट करूची, whereas जो उधर करिया कथा employment generate करिया कथा, infrastructure development करिया कथा, सेटा करू ना. You can either have free food grain or you can have good number of jobs. In one country you cannot have both. Remember this. This is the price we are paying. The educated people of the youth, तुम्हें बहुत सारा पाठशाला पढ़ेगी तो आपको देखिए चाकरी नहीं, कहीं कि नहीं. One of the reasons is that because the resources of the country are going to the such people. This is what I mean by critical thinking ability. Surface level जन कहियो कि हाँ सब free मान तो बहुत भलो कथा, गवर्नमेंट फ्री रे दूची. When you go to the deeper level, this is coming at a cost. It's a separate matter that you don't know what you are paying for. तुम्हें को cost दो जो तुम्हें जानी ना, but you are paying a cost.
But sir, I have one point actually.
Mhm.
Sir, when you say something is free, so we are assuming that it's free and unlimited. But there is a middle ground of free and limited also, correct? So instead of
So we are
making,
not going to that ground. ସେଇଟା ତ ସେ social welfareism ଆଡକୁ ଆସିଯିବ, କହିବି କିଛି ଲୋକଙ୍କୁ ଦରକାର ଅଛି ତାଙ୍କର ମାନେ they are from the beginning they are incapable. So ଆମେ ତାଙ୍କୁ ଯଦି ଗୋଟେ at least limited amount ର subsidy ନ ଦେବା, ସେମାନେ କେମିତି develop ହେବେ? ମୁଁ ଗୋଟେ ଜାଣି ଜାଣି ହିଁ ଗୋଟେ extreme case ନେଇଥିଲି. So that I was just testing your critical thinking ability. Problem କଣ ହଉଛି କି maximum ଲୋକ even ସେତିକି ଭାବିବେ ନାହିଁ। ଲୋକମାନେ କହିବେ କି ହଁ ଫ୍ରିରେ ତ ଦବା କଥା। The reason is that କି ଏଟା ତ ମାନେ ଏଟା କଣ ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ ପର୍ସନାଲ ପଇସା କି, ଏଟା ତ ଟ୍ୟାକ୍ସ ପେୟର୍ସ ମନି, ତ ଏଥିରେ ଯଦି କରାହଉଛି ତମର ଅସୁବିଧା କଣ ହଉଛି? ସୋ ଦିସ୍ ଇଜ ସରଫେସ୍ ଲେଭେଲ ଅଫ ଥିଙ୍କିଂ। ତମେ ଯୋଉଟା କହିଲ ସେଟା ଗୋଟେ ମିଡିଲ ଗ୍ରାଉଣ୍ଡ ନେଇକି କହିଲ, ଦ୍ୟାଟ ଇଜ କରେକ୍ଟ। ବଟ ଆମର ତ ଏଇ ଗ୍ରାଉଣ୍ଡ ସେଟା ନଥିଲା ନା। ଆଇ ଆସ୍କ୍ଡ ୟୁ କି should it be water should be potable water should be free for all. Now you can argue that suppose ଆମେ water free କରିବା or maybe subsidize କରିବା to some extent, specifically for some rural areas, specifically for some hilly areas ଯୋଉଥିରେ ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ ସେଇ ସେତିକି resources ନାହିଁ, that can be justified. I'm not denying that, but that was not our point in any case. What was our point? Our point is how can we think deeply about some issues, and that will come from one of the ways that will come from is through education. So that means এটা ବି ଗୋଟେ ethical reasoning or moral reasoning ହଉ ନାହିଁ କି? ଆମେ ଏଠି moral reasoning କରୁଛେ ନା, is it justified to give things for free to people? ଆମେ କେମିତି ଏଇ ability କୁ develop କଲୁ? Through critical thinking ଆମେ develop କଲୁ. So that means it came from outside. That is my point. Through education, through critical thinking, it came to us. Okay. କେହି ଏଟା ଗୋଟେ 5 ବର୍ଷର ପିଲା କଣ ଏତିକି କଥା ଭାବି କହିପାରିବ? କହିପାରିବ ନାହିଁ, because this is not innate. Inbuilt ନୁହେଁ ଏଇ ଜିନିଷଟା। Okay. Similarly, you see what can be other type of learning. We can also infer from situations. Inferring from situation ମାନେ indirectly କୋଉ situation ରୁ ଆମେ କିଛି conclusion draw କଲୁ indirectly, ସେଥିରୁ ଆମେ learn କରିପାରିବୁ। indirectly ମାନେ କଣ? Suppose କୋଉ society ରେ କୋଉ type ର ଜିନିଷ ହଉଛି, ସେଥିରୁ ଦେଖି ଆମେ ବୁଝିଗଲୁ କି okay ଏମିତିଆ ଆମେ ଚଳିବା କଥା। For example, you might have also learned many things from your own life experience. ତୁମ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ କିଛି ହେଇଛି, suppose କଣ ହେଲା କି ତମେ ଗୋଟେ ସାଙ୍ଗକୁ ବହୁତ believe କରିଥିଲ but ତୁମକୁ ଧୋକା ଦେଇଦେଲା। So what you inferred from this situation is କାହାକୁ blindly believe କରିବା କଥା ନୁହଁ। So this level of understanding we are inferring from situation. କେହି ଆମକୁ specifically ଆସି କହିଦେଲେନି, ଏଠି ଯେମିତି education ଭଳିଆ କେହି ଆମକୁ କହିଦେଲେନି, but still we understood. ସେମିତି ethical development ହୁଏ କି ନାହିଁ? Ethical development ହୁଏ। I'll give you one example of my own. In my young age what happened was that once ମାନେ ଗୋଟେ usually କଣ ହେଲା, ଏମିତି ଯୋଉ train type ର ଯୋଉ ଭିକାରୀ ମାନେ ଆସନ୍ତି, initially I did not used to give them anything. ମତେ ଲାଗେ କି यार ଦେଖିଲେ ବି ଜଣା ପଡେ କି यार ଏମାନେ healthy ଲୋକ ଅଛନ୍ତି, ସେମାନେ ପଇସା ନେଇକି କଣ କରିବେ, ସେମାନେ just because they are lazy maybe they are taking money. Once it happened that I met a person. I was in Ranchi. It was very like really cold, and that guy was holding his baby. ସେ ବହୁତ ଛୋଟ ବେବି ଟାକୁ ଧରିଥିଲା, and ସେ ବହୁତ ଆମେ ସବୁ ଜ୍ୟାକେଟ ୱାକେଟ ରେ ଥିଲୁ, he was shivering. ତା ଦେହରେ ସେମିତି କିଛି ନଥିଲା, ବେବି କୁ just ଗୋଟେ ପତଳା ଚାଦରରେ ଘୋଡେଇଥିଲି। He came to me and he asked money. I said why? He said ki I want to buy a ମାନେ ମୁଁ ୟା ପାଇଁ ଗୋଟେ ଚାଦର ଗୋଟେ କିଣିବି, କିଛି ଗୋଟେ କିଣିବି, just out of habit I said ki with, because I have seen I had earlier also been ମାନେ ମୋର kindness was abused. I have seen that ମାନେ ଭିକାରୀ ମାନେ ସେ ପଇସା ନେଇକି କଣ କରନ୍ତି। So I realized କି okay ତାହେଲେ ଦବା କଥା ନୁହେଁ, so just out of habit I said no. Then after he left, then suddenly it ମାନେ ମୋର realization ଆସିଲା କି I at least in this case I should not have thought twice. I should have given. Point is some of my friends said କି କାହିଁକି ଦବାର ଥିଲା, ସିଏ କଣ କରିବ ସେ ପଇସା ନେଇକି, ସେ ସେଥିରେ ସେ ବେବି ପାଇଁ କିଣିବ ନାହିଁ ଚାଦର, what he will do କି ସେଥିରେ ସେ drugs କରିବ, alcohol କିଣିବ, something like that. Then, but I reasoned कि we should rather take that kind of risk कि maybe he or she might do that. I could have also gone with him कि चलो मैं तुमको पैसा देबी, मैं तुमको directly चादर किन दे, but I should have taken some steps. The reason was that he was not asking money for himself, he was asking money for the baby, and I could see from the situation, I inferred that the baby was in pain. I should have immediately acted. That was a mistake on my part. Point is no one told me that, and ସେଇଭଳିଆ situation ରେ future ଏମିତି similar case ହୁଏ, ମୁଁ ଦେଇଦିଏ, even if there is a risk କି चलो he might abuse my kindness, maybe ସେଇଟା scam ହଉଛି କଣ ହଉଛି, I don't think twice, ଏଇ ଭଳିଆ କେସ୍ ଆସିଲେ ମୁଁ ଦେଇଦିଏ ପଇସା. So inferring from situation, is this not an example of ethical development? More of ethical development hala. I realize that sometimes you have to take a risk, okay, but we should try to help others. Inferring from situations, are you able to understand?
सर एई जोटा कहिले एटा क्राइसिस ऑफ कॉन्साइंस रो एग्जांपल ले सेट हे परिबो कि
हेई परियो sure. बट एग्जाम रे एमतिया लिखियोनी मु जो मिस्टेक कली लिखियोनी कि मु सेया कली बनी. You have to show माने better thing ना. चलो, I sometimes think about that incident till now. Yeah, I should have helped that person. Anyway, let us
एई
go
सर
to the
बेले
next.
बेले सेमति क्राइसिस ऑफ कॉन्साइंस इट्स ओके
कौन कौन?
मतलब सर बेले बेले एमति गिल्ट फील आसी जाय इट्स ओके
Yes, 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 yeah. Actually, yes, yeah. ठीक अछि. That also helps us in ethical development. I hope कि someone else would have helped it. That is what we can hope. Next, let us see social or cultural norms. Social or cultural norms to be हमें learn करूँ. For example, what is cultural norm? Think, for example, if there is in one culture, they are suppose respecting women. Cultural norm through रे हमें learn करूँ ना ethics. Now it's a separate matter कि हमें opposite जिनसे भी learn कर परियो. Okay. If you are from maybe a society from Haryana or something, traditionally their cultural norm is such that they don't give that much importance to women. And this is an understatement. Actually, बहुत ही खराब ताकर behavior अछि. Okay. ताकर ଗୋଟେ saying अछि कि एमान तो होचंती कौन जूते दी रत्ती बराबर, something like that. They have said this. So it can be also be ମାନେ opposite way रे भी ହେଇପାରେ. So ଆମେ unethical value भी ଶିଖି ପାରୁ. But point होची कि ethical value भी ଆମେ ଶିଖୁ ना. କୋଉଥିରେ ଶିଖୁ? Cultural norms. कल्चर रे जोटा नॉर्म अछि सेथर भी और सोसाइटी रे जहां नॉर्म अछि सेथर हम सिखो. इंडियन कल्चर रे हम बहुत सारा खराब जिंस विषय डिस्कस करले, किछि भलो जिंस विषय डिस्कस करिया. वन ऑफ द बेस्ट थिंग्स अबाउट इंडियन कल्चर्स इज दैट आवर कम्युनिटी लिविंग और कम्युनिटी लाइफ जोटा अछि, जॉइंट फैमिली लाइफ जोटा अछि, इंटर कनेक्टिविटी और इंटर डिपेंडेंस तो छाड़ो, इंटर कनेक्टिविटी जोटा कहयो हमर जो सोशल फैब्रिक ता बहुत स्ट्रांग अछि. ओके, सो दिस इज आल्सो कल्चरल नॉर्म. So we can say that we have learned this from our society, है ना. So these are many ways in which ethics we understand ethics. Now this is a final point that ଗୋଟେ ମାନେ mark ବଢେଇବା ପାଇଁ ଏଇ ସବୁ point mention କରିପାରିବ. Free will and human reason. Again, this comes from your own. This ମାନେ one of the main things this comes from is also education. This also comes from moral reasoning, है ना, critical thinking. ये सब जिनिसରୁ ହିଁ ଏଇଟା ଆସେ. ଜିନିଷର ମାନେ କଣ? Free will. Free will mane we have the free will to act as we want to. So if we have a choice, that means we have a choice to be either moral or also we also have a choice to be immoral. When you actually have a choice and you choose to be moral, from that you will understand that okay, you are a good person. But how will you choose that thing? Only if you have developed these things. Similarly, some people have choice, they choose to be immoral. Criminals, for example. Many criminals, it also might have that they did not have a choice, say through a develop. Again, that's a separate matter. But if you see, most of the criminals actually had a choice, but they chose to be immoral. So one of the reasons how we can develop this is through choice, and this choice also comes from education, moral reasoning, and critical thinking. And this choice is known as free will. कि आम पाखरे will free will अच्छी, आमे choose कर परिया how to behave. Free will विषय आमे बहुत डिटेल ले जाऊने. या विषय बहुत डिबेट अच्छी. गोटे डिबेट होची कि free will versus determinism. This debate, if you want, you can Google this free will versus determinism debate. एथरे कुआ होची किछि लोक कहउछन्ती कि नाही हमर एक्चुअली किछि फ्री विल नाही, सब किछि डिटरमाइंड. इवन देखो आम सोसाइटी रे बहुत लोक अछन्ती जो माने कहे कि अरे आमे कोन किछि करछु, सब तो सेही कालिया भरोसा, सब सेही करूछि. दे माने वी कैन कैटेगराइज देम अंडर डिटरमिनिज्म. आमे कहया कि बिकॉज़ समान भाबुछन्ती कि फ्री विल बोली किछि नाही, और जोटा आमे फ्री विल बोली भाबुछु सेटा गोटे इल्यूजन. एक्चुअली जहाँ होची सब डिटरमिनिज्म, माने आगु प्री डिटरमाइंड हेछि, सब तो लेखा हेछि, सब जातक लेखा अछि, सब भाग्य लेखा अछि. एई भला जो माने कथा कहन से माने हम डिटरमिनिस्ट कहउछु. And usually it is seen that people who are determinists, they are not very moral. They are not very moral. Okay. Rather those who think that they have free will and they usually choose to be good, they are actually moral, more moral people. It is usually observed. Okay. So what is the point of it? The point of it is ki we can also be moral through free will. We choose to be good. And here you can give example of maybe people like Nelson Mandela. You can give example of people like Gandhi ji. देखो तांको against कितने injustice हला. The point is they faced many injustice. If they wanted, they could have justified it towards something else. ସେମାନେ କହିଥାନ୍ତି ମାଣ୍ଡେଲା ମେ ବି ଯଦି କ୍ରିମିନାଲ ହେଇଥାନ୍ତେ ସେମାନେ କହିଥାନ୍ତେ କି यार ମୋ ପାଖରେ ତ ଚଏସ୍ ହିଁ ନଥିଲା, ମୁଁ କ୍ରିମିନାଲ ଏଥିପାଇଁ ହେଲି ବିକଜ ମତେ ଏଇ ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ ଏତେ ବର୍ଷ ଧରି ଜେଲରେ ରଖିଲା. Gandhiji could have done the same. Gandhiji could have turned violent, and we would have said, if people would have asked कि काहे कि आपण violent होचंदी, Gandhiji would have said कि because मते एते वर्ष धरि imprison कराला unjustly. But despite so much injustice, they exercised their free will to become more moral. So this shows that this kind of person, how strong this person is. Human reason तो हमें moral reasoning कथा है, but free will. My idea is that, my understanding is that sometimes it is innate, sometimes it is learned, but finally it is all about free will or choice. Here comes the choice part. Many of these things are not by choice. It may be by default, or you might be forced to it, or you might have experienced it without your consent. But hey, you learn କିଛି ଜିନିଷ ତମର innate ଅଛି, but finally why will you be moral? Because finally this you have this choice, free will. And this is also the conclusion कि what is the source of ethics? ଆମେ କହିବା कि କିଛି ଜିନିଷ innate ଅଛି, କିଛି ଜିନିଷ learned ଅଛି, and କିଛି ଜିନିଷ chosen ଅଛି. Some things are inside us from the beginning, some things we learn from our external environment, and some things we choose to be. And this, my friends, is the summary or the essence of ethics. Please understand, this equation is very, very, very important. You understand this equation, you can write any kind of vague question that comes from ethics in general. Innate, learned, and chosen. And this equation is nowhere, you will not find it in any standard book or anything, because this is based on my own understanding of the subject. କୋଉ କୋଚିଂ ମେଟେରିଆଲ କୋଉଠି ନାହିଁ ଏସବୁ ଜିନିଷ. ଓକେ
तर ସେଟା ଲାଷ୍ଟ କୁ ଯୋଉ ପ୍ଲସ୍ ସାଇନ୍ ଜାଗାରେ ଇକ୍ୱାଲ ଟୁ ହବ ନା, ଇନେଟ୍ ପ୍ଲସ୍
ନା
ଲର୍ଣ୍ଣ
ନା
ଇକ୍ୱାଲ ଟୁ
ଇକ୍ୱାଲ ଟୁ
ପ୍ଲସ୍
କେମିତି
ପ୍ଲସ୍
ହବ? ଆରେ ଇନେଟ୍ ଯୋଉଟା ସେଟା ଲର୍ଣ୍ଣ କି? ସେଟା ତ ଲର୍ଣ୍ଣ ନୁହଁ. ଇନେଟ୍ ଗୋଟେ ଅଲଗା ଜିନିଷ, ଲର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଗୋଟେ ଅଲଗା ଜିନିଷ, ଚୋଜେନ୍ ଗୋଟେ ଅଲଗା ଜିନିଷ, ଫ୍ରି ଚଏସ୍, ତିନିଟା ଅଲଗା ଅଲଗା ଜିନିଷ. Finally something will develop, that is ethics. ଏଇଟା finally develop ହବ ethics. Okay.
Sir, free will ଯୋଗୁ
Yes.
ଆମେ choose କରୁଛେ to be moral. That
Yes.
is the last. Okay.
ନା ନା ନା, ଆରେ ଏତେ ସାରା ରାମାୟଣ ପୁରା ସରିଗଲା. ଆରେ ମୁଁ ଫାଇନାଲ କନକ୍ଲୁଜନ ହେଲା କି ଏ ସବୁ ଗୁଡା ଫ୍ୟାକ୍ଟର ପାଇଁ ଆମେ ମୋରାଲ ଅଛୁ. ଷ୍ଟାର୍ଟିଂ ହବ କଣ, ଏମିତିଆ ପିରାମିଡ ଦେଖ. ଆମେ ସାନବେଳେ ଷ୍ଟାର୍ଟିଂରେ ଆମ ପାଖରେ କିଛି ଇନେଟ୍ ଜିନିଷ ଅଛି, ମାନେ ଇନବିଲ୍ଡ ଜିନିଷ ଅଛି. We also have some tendency to be moral. ତାପରେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ ଗ୍ରୋ କରିବୁ, ଆମେ ଲର୍ନ କରିବୁ ବହୁତ ସାରା, ଆମ ସୋସାଇଟିରୁ, ସ୍କୁଲରୁ, ପ୍ୟାରେଣ୍ଟସଠୁ ବହୁତ ସାରା ଜିନିଷ ଲର୍ନ କରିବୁ. ଫାଇନାଲି ଏ ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ହେଲା ପରେ many of these are not voluntary, involuntary ଜିନିଷ. Okay. ଆମେ ଜାଣି ଜାଣି ଏଗୁଡା ଚୁଜ୍ କରିବୁ. ଫାଇନାଲି କଣ ହବ, ଆମର ଫ୍ରି will develop this free will, ଯାହା ଥ୍ରୋରେ ଆମେ କହିବୁ କି ଓକେ ଆମ ପାଖରେ ଚଏସ୍ ଅଛି, we can be moral or immoral. So on the basis of choice we are choosing to be moral. Now this is the highest level of ethical development. If you compare this with the Kohlberg's level, this is the level of this final level. So what is the final answer? So ethics ର source କଣ? ମୁଁ କହିବି କି ethics ର ତିନିଟା ଏକ source ଅଛି. Innate ଅଛି, learned ଅଛି, chosen ବି ଅଛି. ଆଉ ଯୋଉ ଏଇ ସବୁ ପଏଣ୍ଟ ଗୁଡା ଷ୍ଟାର୍ଟିଂ ରେ ପଏଣ୍ଟ ପାଇଁ ସେ ସବୁ ଗଡ ଦେଖ, ବାକି ଯେତିକି ଆମେ ଡିସକସ କଲେ ନା, we can put all of those factors under either of these. For example, if you see God କୁ ଆମେ କୋଉଠି ପକେଇବା? God or divine law giver କୁ ଆମେ ଏଇଠି ପକେଇବା, because it is learned. କିଏ କଣ ରିଲିଜିୟନ ବିଷୟରେ, ଗଡ ବିଷୟରେ ମା ପେଟରୁ ଶିଖିକି ଆସିଥାଏ କି? ଜନ୍ମ ହେଲା ପରେ ତାଙ୍କୁ ବାବୁ ଏଠି ଧୂପ ଦୀପ ଲଗାଅ, ଏମିତି କ୍ଲକ୍ ୱାଇଜ ଦୁଇଥର ବୁଲାଅ, ଏମିତି କର, ସେମିତି କର. Why? Because we are worshipping this God. Why are we worshipping this God? Because the God tells us what is right, what is wrong. So we learned it. You think of any of the points that we discussed, you can put one of these under one of these columns. So ତେଣୁ ଆମେ କାହାକୁ କହିବା, କାହା ପାଇଁ ଆମେ ethical or moral ହଉଛେ? ଆମେ finally କହିବା କି ଆମେ ଏଇ ତିନିଟା ଯାକ ପାଇଁ ethical ହଉଛୁ. Okay, ହେଇପାରେ କାହା ଭିତରେ କୋଉଟା କମ ଥାଇପାରେ, ବେଶୀ ଥାଇପାରେ, but the point is we all have something or the other from all of these. So this is our final answer. Sources of ethics are three types of categories of sources. It might be innate, it might be learned, it might be chosen. Any other single factor if you bring out, if you can bring out God, if you can bring out social agents of socialization, then you can put them under one of these. Okay, ବୁଝି ହଉଛି?
Yes, sir.
ଦେଖ ଗୋଟେ क्वेश्चन ଭିତରେ ଦେଖ କେତେ डीप रे ଆମେ ଗଲେ, ଆମେ ପୁରା ethics ର ପୁରା summary ବାହାର କରିଦେଲେ. Okay, this is actually the essence of ethics. Very people actually understand it. Till now, I have a feeling that some of you might be thinking ki why you are ethical or not ethical. I hope that you know that you are ethical. So why you are ethical, you would not have thought so much. ତମେ ଭାବିବ କି ମୁଁ ethical ଏଥିପାଇଁ because चलो भगवान अछंती, ମୁଁ ଭଗବାନରେ ବିଶ୍ୱାସ କରୁଛି ସେଥିପାଇଁ ମୁଁ ethical. But today you learned ki that is not the only reason. Actually, majority reason is that many of the things also you learned from outside, and many of these things also you had chosen, although तुमको जଣା नଥିଲା कि सेटा choiceଥିଲା, but you chose. So that means you have that free will. Okay, so ତିନିଟା ଯାକ ଜିନିଷ ପାଇଁ ତମର ଯାହା ବି ethical development ହେଇଛି ତିନିଟା ଯାକ ଜିନିଷ ପାଇଁ ହେଇଛି. Okay,
ହଁ sir ଏବେ relate କରି ହଉଛି।
very good. Okay, ଆମେ ମାନେ ଯେତିକି depth ରେ ଯାଇଛୁ, so trust me, it is very 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 deep. We have gone to the core of ethics. Okay, let's move on to the next part. What are the contributions or uses of ethics? ଏଥିରେ ବହୁତ deep ରେ ଯିବାର କିଛି ନାହିଁ। ଏଥିରେ ବେସିକାଲି ଆମର ଏମିତି ବହୁତ ସାରା GS ଟପିକ ରେ ବାହାର କରୁନା, advantages disadvantages ସେଇ ସବୁ ସେଇ ଭଳିଆ ଗୋଟେ ଟପିକ, but sometimes it will be asked. For example, the second question ଯୋଉ ଦିଆ ହେଇଥିଲା, first question ତ ଏଇଟା ଥିଲା ମୁଁ ଦେଇଥିଲି, second question ଯୋଉଟା ପଚରା ହେଇଥିଲା ସେଇ question ଟା ହଉଛି 2016 or something ର UPSC ରେ ଆସିଥିଲା, but because this is also part of ethics, कि ethical ହେଲେ first କଥା ତ ହେଲା ଆମେ ethical କାହିଁକି ହଉ or କେମିତି ହଉ. Now point is कि ethical ହେଲେ କଣ ଲାଭ ହଉଛି. Okay, so this question was asked in UPSC 2016 or 17, ମୋର ମନେ ନାହିଁ, check କରିଦବ. So we'll say कि contributions or uses of ethics होची तीनिटा: decision making, individual well-being, social well-being. Okay, now decision making can come under these two, but usually it comes under, sometimes you can also put it under individual well-being. Okay. Now let us see कि कौन कौन है. First ହେଲା individual well-being रे, ମୁଁ ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଏଟା put कर दीजिए, but if you see decision making will also impact social well-being. We'll see how. देखो ethical dilemma ଯେତେ ଗୁଡ଼ା ଅଛି, ଆମର ଯଦି ethical understanding, ଆମେ ଯଦି ethical ହେଇଥିବା ତାହେଲେ ethical dilemma ଏତେ ସାରା ହବନି, और ହେଲେ ବି ଆମେ ତାକୁ resolve କରିନବା. This is the point. Suppose for example the dilemma that I had faced at that time. Okay. Many a times कौन हबो, actually तुमको dilemma टा बहुत ही short time पे face करियो, माने तुमको immediately decision नबाकू पड़ियो बहुत time रे. Okay, and immediate न भी हो, suppose immediate भी हो, तुम आराम से भाभी कि you can take a decision. Suppose तुम ऑफिस रे अछ, you are माने तुम्हारो ethical dilemma कौन हला कि तुम्हारो superiors माने तुम कहउछन तुम bribe नियो बोली, तुम चाहनो bribe नबा, you have enough time to decide and take a decision. It's not like कि immediately decision नबार अछि, but चलो मु जेंते फेस कली immediate dilemma थिला, I made a wrong choice at that time. But if I had developed sufficient ethical knowledge, then the point is कि I could have taken the correct decision. So decision making हमको help करियो, and that will lead to ethical well-being. बर्तन point होची ethical well individual well-being को केमती lead करछि, because when you are taking the right course of action. Yes, someone saying something or कहार audio on नहीं है. Okay, the point is if you are being ethical, individual well-being केमती हबो, because तुम suppose mental clarity तुमर रहइबो, mental clarity रहइबो, anxiety किसी रहइबो नाही, stress किसी रहइबो नाही. बर्तन मते खराब काहेकि लागिला, तापर एबे भी मते से कथा मन पड़े, एंजाइटी भी टेंशन नहीं. The point is because I know that I took the wrong decision. Now it will happen that तुम कहबे सर आमे जदि suppose moral or ethically correct decision नहीं थान, and ता पई किछि adverse reaction आस्तन, this also might happen, but still it will be called individual well-being in the sense कि तुमर financially किछि loss हेतै पारे, career wise किछि loss हेतै पारे, but at the end of the day you will be relaxed, you will be happy because you took the right decision. This is the meaning of individual well-being here. देखो एठी individual well-being सही सेंस रे, ethical सेंस रे कुआ होते, एठी इकोनॉमिक सेंस रे कुआ जाउ नहीं, कैरियर प्रोग्रेशन सेंस रे कुआ जाउ नहीं. हेई पारे कि तुमको जले तुम सुपीरियर प्रेशराइज कले, ब्राइब नवा को तुम्हें मना कर देलो, you will get transferred to somewhere else. So you faced difficulties, no doubt, but individual well-being here means कि don't have any ethical dilemma anymore after taking that decision. Okay, now what is the second point? Second point is that अच्छा चलो एटा मु individual well-being under रखली एटा social well-being please write this under social well-being. Social well-being रे एटा हबना preservation of society or community, evolutionary argument कि जेतବେଳେ society टा ethical हबो सेतବେଳେ society टा सेतବେଳେ ही society टा माने exist करियो गोटे community टा exist करियो यदि unethical हवा for example we discussed about this thing if in any society or in any species killing is considered to be ethical or not unethical at least ତାହେଲେ ସେ ତାଙ୍କ ଭିତରେ ମାରାମାରି ହେଇଯିବେ କେହି ଆଉ ବଞ୍ଚିବେ କି so that cannot be the case similar case you think ଏଇ ଏଟା ଲେଖା ହେଇଛି cannibalism what is the meaning of cannibalism can anyone say
Eating
who are called
humans.
not just this is used in a broader sense so what you are saying is humans eating humans है ना ଗୋଟେ ଲାୟନ ଯଦି ହ୍ୟୁମାନ କୁ ଇଟ୍ କରିଦେଲା ତାହେଲେ ସେଟା କାନିବାଲ କୁହାହବ କି ଲାୟନ ଲାୟନ କୁ ତ ଲାୟନ ହିଁ କୁହାହବ ନା କାନିବାଲିଜମ ର ବ୍ରଡ ମିନିଂ ହେଲା ଗୋଟେ ସ୍ପେସିଜ ର ଅର୍ଗାନିଜମ ସେଇ ସେମ ସ୍ପେସିଜ ର ଆଉ ଗୋଟାକୁ ଖାଇବା ଦିସ୍ ଇଜ ଭେରି ଭେରି ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ ହ୍ୱାଟ ଇଜ ଦ ମିନିଂ ବିକଜ ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ ସ୍ପେସିଜ ତ ଖାଆନ୍ତି ଫୁଡ ଚେନ୍ ଅର ଫୁଡ ୱେବ ରେ ତ ଏଟା ହୁଏ ଦ୍ୟାଟ ଇଜ ନର୍ମାଲ କାନି ବଟ୍ କେବେ ବି ୟୁଜୁଆଲି ଏଟା ହୁଏ ନାହିଁ ତମେ ଦେଖିଥିବ କି ସେମ ସ୍ପେସିଜ ର ଗୋଟେ ଅର୍ଗାନିଜମ ଗୋଟେ ମେମ୍ବର ତାର ହିଁ ସ୍ପେସିଜ ର ଗୋଟେ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ମେମ୍ବର କୁ ଖାଇବା ଦିସ୍ ଇଜ ଭେରି ଭେରି ରେୟାର ଇଭେନ ଇନ୍ ନେଚର ଇଟସେଲ୍ଫ ଆଇ ଏମ୍ ନଟ୍ ସେଇଙ୍ଗ ଇଟ୍ ଡଜଣ୍ଟ ହ୍ୟାପନ୍ ଇଟ୍ ହ୍ୟାପନ୍ସ ତମେ ଦେଖିଥିବ କିଛି କୁକୁଡା ବି ଏମିତିଆ ଥିବେ କି ତାଙ୍କର ନିଜର ପିଲାକୁ ବି ଗୋଟେ ଛୋଟ ପିଲା ଗୋଟେ ବେଳେ ବେଳେ ଗିଳି ଦିଅନ୍ତି ବଟ୍ ଦ୍ୟାଟ ଇଜ ଭେରି ଭେରି ରେୟାର ଦ୍ୟାଟ ଇଜ ନଟ୍ ଦ ନ୍ୟାଚୁରାଲ ଅର୍ଡର ନେଚରରେ ଦେଖିବ କି ଦେୟାର ଇଜ ଏ ଭେରି କ୍ଲିୟର କଟ୍ ଡିଷ୍ଟିଂସନ ଅର ହାଇରାର୍କି ଅଛି ଫୁଡ ୱେବ ସବୁ ଅଛି ସେମାନେ ହେଇପାରେ ଲାୟନ ୱିଲ୍ ଇଟ୍ ଡିଅର ବଟ୍ ତାର ଓନ୍ ସ୍ପେସିଜ ରେ ଯଦି ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଲାୟନ ଅଛି ତାକୁ ଆଟାକ୍ କରିପାରେ ଓକେ ରାଇଭାଲ ଲାୟନ୍ସ କୁ ଆଟାକ୍ କରେ ବଟ୍ ଇଭେନ୍ ଆଫ୍ଟର ଡିଫିଟିଂ ଦ୍ୟାଟ ଲାୟନ ଦେ ୱିଲ୍ ନଟ୍ ଇଟ୍ ଦ ଲାୟନ लायन को ईट किए करियो हाइना विल कम एंड ईट द लायन मे बी लायन को फाइनली मारिकी बट वन लायन विल नॉट ईट अनदर लायन आमे बर्तन कथा होची इज दिस नॉट एन एग्जांपल ऑफ एथिक्स यस दिस इज एन इनबिल्ट एथिक्स एंड दिस इज एगुड़ा कुछ ना इवोल्यूशनरी आर्गुमेंट होची एटा कि एई जो वैल्यूटा केमते डेवलप कला एई वैल्यूटा डेवलप कला बिकॉज ऑफ आवर नेसेसिटी नॉट बिकॉज ऑफ एनी काइंड ऑफ मोरल रीजनिंग ओके ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड कैनिबलिज्म यूजुअली सोसाइटी रे न थाए काहे कि न थाए बिकॉज जो भी सोसाइटी जो भी स्पेसीज रे कैनिबलिज्म आसी जीवो से स्पेसीज ता सर्वाइव ही करबा जदी काली हम कुआ गला कि हमें ह्यूमंस माने और लेट अस से इंडियंस माने यू आर अलाउड टू ईट एनीवन अदर ह्यूमन को ईट कर मटन खाउछ चिकन खाउछ अन्य ह्यूमन को खाई परियो हबो कोन मे बी 50-60 वर्ष पर हम इंडियंस माने कि नथि सो दिस इज हाउ दिस इज preservation of society or community आमे निजर हमर एक्जिस्टेंस को केंति बंचे दिस इज वन ऑफ द आउटकम्स स्टीलिंग स्टीलिंग देखियो कि यूजुअली जते डेवलप्ड कंट्री डेवलप्ड सोसाइटी रे स्टीलिंग लेवल ऑफ स्टीलिंग इज वेरी लेस डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज रे ही स्टीलिंग बेसी अछि ना काहे कि अछि बिकॉज़ से माने रियलाइज करि छन कि जो सोसाइटी स्टील करियो बेसी से माने बेसी ग्रो करिवे नहीं ओके सिमिलरली सी द नेक्स्ट पॉइंट क्विड प्रो क्वो व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ क्विड प्रो क्वो चलो एटा तो लिखा हिची बदल ले स्टिल टेल मी व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ क्विड प्रो क्वो क्विड प्रो क्वो माने मु तमरो किसी गोटे बेनिफिट करबी इन रिटर्न तुमे मोर किसी बेनिफिट करियो सो नॉट नेसेसरली मॉनेटरी but maybe I give you a favor you give me back a favor so that is called as you scratch my back I'll scratch yours so this is also one of the uses or outcomes of being ethical hele kono labha hobo तुमको quid pro quo basis रे किछि benefits मिलिबो in the sense कि if you are ethical towards someone that other person will also be likely to be ethical towards you okay? This is actually known as something known as the golden rule of ethics एटा परे भी अछि हम डोंट वरी golden rule of ethics कौन कहूची do unto others as you would have them do unto you हमें पर भी एटा देखिया जिनसरा कौन कहूची do unto others as you would have them do unto you माने अन्य को सेमितिया बिहेव करो जेमितिया तुमे एक्सपेक्ट करछो और चाहूछो कि से माने तुमको बिहेव करन तो आमे केमिति एक्सपेक्ट करछु कि अन्य माने हमको बिहेव करन आमे एक्सपेक्ट करछु कि अन्य माने एथिकली और मोरली हमको बिहेव करन भलो वे रे बिहेव करन so that is why you are also behaving well with others okay this is the argument now you see next point कि यार uses कौन और contribution कौन individual well-being को कि ethics also inculcates values essential for the development of the individual development रे help करे जोटा तो usually हमें personality development को many parts of these things, if you'll see, it is part of your personality development. तो मतलब finally personality test हो. If you see, actually, if you have noticed this or not, many of the interviews, so called interviews, actually देखिए ସେଥିରେ तार official definition interview नथियो. UPSC CSPT Civil Services Personality Test, it is not called as interview. Interview टाको तो हम short रे ताको refer करूँ कि हम यार मु जाऊँ interview. But if you see, it is called as personality test. The reason is that बाकी प्री मेंस ये सब रे तुम्हारा knowledge test is. Now they are going to test your personality. And how will they judge your personality? On the basis of many of the ethical values, on the basis of whether your individuality has been developed or not, your truthfulness, your kindness. And this actually, how they will test is that they will maybe ask you such questions in such a different manner that if there is consistency in your answer, then they will know that okay, he is answering truthfully. If there is inconsistency, they will know that you are not being truthful. For example, if they will ask you, why do you want to join OS? You will say कि sir, I want to serve the poor and ये वो बहुत किसी जिनिस करे. हो ठीक अछि. तापर आउ अन्य जिनिस किछि किछि पचारि. After 10-15 minutes, they will maybe pick up something from your point and they will say कि where do you want to get posted? तो sir ମୁଁ ଚାହୁଁଛି ଭୁବନେଶ୍ୱରରେ posting ନେବି. ତ ତାଙ୍କୁ why do you want to get posted? ନା ମୁଁ education କରିବି, ଏଟା କରିବି, ସେଟା କରିବି. ସେମାନେ କହିବେ କି ଆଚ୍ଛା ତୁମେ କାହିଁକି ଅନ୍ୟ ସବୁ କେବିକେ ଡିଷ୍ଟ୍ରିକ୍ଟରେ ପଠେଇଲେ କଣ ହବ? ସାର୍ କେବିକେ ଡିଷ୍ଟ୍ରିକ୍ଟ ମୋ ଘରଠୁ ଟିକେ ଦୂର ହେଇଯିବ. So they may not tell you, but they will understand that there is an inherent contradiction in your own answer. Starting में तुम कहले कि ମୁଁ ଲୋକ ସେବା କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଯିବି. Then you finally are saying कि ନାଇଁ ମୁଁ ଘର ପାଖରେ ରହିବି. That means you are misleading them. So can you see from your answer itself, your ethical values, your personality will also reflect. So that means if you are giving this kind of inconsistent answers, means you have a deceiving personality. You do not have a truthful personality. चलो हम डाइवर्ट हो गए से आड़ू जीवा कथा. Provides for ऐसे सब जिन सब भाबिले तो टेंशन में भी लगी पारे. So in general, I'll give you one advice: don't just think of this paper only for your answer writing or something. Even after you clear means, please again read the topic again. गोटे स्टोरी भाया ही पढ़ा को ट्राई करो. Okay. Anyway, what is the other contribution? It provides purpose or meaning to our lives. देखो ये बहुत ही गोटे बढ़िया पॉइंट जोटा कि बहुत लोग रियलाइज करना थे. Ethics also provides purpose or meaning to our life, because our final purpose, if you see, many people will say, what do you want to be? Some kind of doctor, administrator. Point is, doctor or administrator are not the end in themselves. IS hava, OS hava is not an end in themselves. It is a means towards an end. What is the means? Sorry, what is that final end? Final end may be public service, or final end may be some kind of welfare to the people. है ना? किसी लोगों को भला करिया. Doctor hava itself is not the should not be the end. The end is to cure people, to elevate their pain. Now the point is, the best thing for this is to become a doctor. Now, for example, you think of personality test. Suppose in other kind of personality test, they will ask you, why do you want to be a doctor? तुम कहेंगे sir, I want to cure people. After some time they will say कि अच्छा भावो तुम्हें डॉक्टर ना है कि तुम्हें नर्स है जीवो. Would you like to join? Okay. You will say कि no sir मतलब नर्स होगा इच्छा नहीं. Then they will know कि there is an inherent contradiction, because finally you can help cure of people by either being doctor, you can also help by being a nurse. No? If you are saying yes to doctor but no to nurse, that means what? That means you are not being truthful. Okay. Anyway, chalo, that's a separate point. I had a personality development କଥା ହଉଥିଲେ. The point of this is that it also provides purpose or meaning to our lives. Actually जो माने डॉक्टर होगा चाहूँचंदी for the ethical reasons, ସେମାନେ ଏଥିପାଇଁ ହବାକୁ ଚାହୁଁଛନ୍ତି because to cure people. Administrator ହବାକୁ ତମେ ଚାହୁଁଛ so that why? Because to help people get some public service for any kind of development. ये सब जिनिस ପାଇଁ ତମେ ହବାକୁ ଚାହୁଁଛ. So this will provide, ethics will provide a meaning to your life. Okay. ଏଗୁଡ଼ା ତ ଚଲା ଆମେ already discuss କରିସାରିଛୁ. ଏଟା ୟା under ଆସିଯିବ. କା under ଆସିଯିବ? ethical dilemma under ଆସିଯିବ. Cognitive dissonance and crisis of conscience. Crisis of conscience ଆମେ ପରେ ଦେଖିବା. Cognitive dissonance ଗୋଟେ technical term. Okay. This also we'll see in attitude chapter ରେ ଆମେ ଏଟା ଦେଖିବା. Attitude chapter ରେ ଏଇ ସବୁ term ଆସିବ. Cognitive dissonance. स्पिरिचुअल वेलबिंग ये सब जेनेरिक पॉइंट या किसी एक्सप्लेन करिया दरकार नहीं हमें एथिकल लेले बेसिस स्पिरिचुअली खुशी हिजवा समथिंग लाइक दैट ओके देन मेंटल वेलबिंग दिस इज आल्सो वेरी एक्सीलेंट पॉइंट clarity of thought to have clarity of thought what you want to be and this will actually reduce your anxiety or stress this will reduce your confusion depression ये सब जिनसे जहाँ थी it is generally considered okay we are not saying कि ये सब जिनसर only reason होची ethics ethical development गोटे लोकर है ही नहीं बोली depression could be due to other life event also but the point is in general if you are more ethical you would have seen कि जो लोग ने बहुत ethical थांती usually ସେମାନେ ତାଙ୍କର ଅନ୍ୟ ସବୁ ବହୁତ ସାରା ଲାଇଫରେ ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ ଆସିପାରେ but on ମାନେ inside they are blissful in the sense कि they know that they are not doing anything wrong I'll tell you another example I'll tell you one very simple advice also that once you get into service what will happen is that initially you will be very ethical है ना किसी corruption no bribery you are very headstrong what will usually gradually happen is that you will start seeing that some of your friends will start taking bribes this will happen 100% this is going to happen now what will happen is that what a peer pressure kind of तुम ऊपर पड़ियो peer pressure कौन पड़ियो तुम डेली मीट रे तुम देखा कोठी गोटे देखा होछ तुम देखलो कि इनिशियली जो सांगटा तुम सांगरे जॉइन करथला सर्विस रे से मे बी 6 मास पर गोटे कार धरी बुलुछ यू आस्क्ड हिम कि भाई कोड कार टा किनला तो अरे सब सिस्टम रे कोन तुम रही बुझी पारनो ए सब जिंस होउची आ तुम कोन पछर रही छ देन ग्रेजुअली थिंक अरे समस्त करछन मु भी करी the point is that once you start doing it one thing will happen and this will continue for your entire career remember this the point is that तुम दिन रे कार चढ़ी परियो बहुत भल रे रही परियो सब किछि कर परियो बट राति रे सोई परियो नहीं definitely you will have sleepless nights if not every day at least once in a while suppose जो गोटे वर्क रे किछि गोटे घोटाला करिछो सेही वर्क रिलेटेड किछि भी टॉपिक 5 वर्ष 10 वर्ष 15 वर्ष पर भी उठिला you will have sleepless nights please don't do such kind of things okay जते peer pressure आसु जहा आसु this is the meaning anxiety or stress काहे की होबा नहीं I know many people okay who are 100% माने किछि ब्राइब नियंत्रण किछि करनदिन सेमानकर कैरियर प्रोग्रेशन सेते भलो भी नहीं तांको किछिकर बहुत भलो भी अछि ओके एंड से लोकंकर बहुत भलो रेपुटेशन वेरी गुड रेपुटेशन गवर्नमेंट अंडरस्टैंड गवर्नमेंट विल नो देखो तुम ब्राइब नेले गवर्नमेंट विल नो यू आर टेकिंग पीपल विल नो ओके एंजाइटी स्ट्रेस एथरु आसु and when you have good reputation you will not worry about these things दिन रे तुम पाखर 100 प्रॉब्लम आस्ते पारे कि रात रे शांति रे तुम सोई पारे okay are you able to understand or not am I audible or कौन है कटि गला सुना होछि
Yes,
तो
sir,
Yes,
हेलो
sir,
audible.
clear.
Yes, sir, audible છે.
Yes, sir.
ओके 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 मते लागला कौन पूरा चुप हो गला किसी फीडबैक नहीं okay next point is that it prevents hedonistic tendencies what is the meaning of this hedonistic hedonism रा माने कौन
The nature enjoyment by to go any limits, maybe.
hedonism माने होछि एटा excessive materialism okay माने एते बेसी materialism की जोटा दरकार भी नहीं और जोटा हमरो एक्चुअली खराब भी करछि से सब जिंस भी करिया okay that is the meaning excessive materialism तो ता माने कौन ना suppose you are more ethical then you will not go towards this जो excessive materialism आडो को जीवन मु मना करनी देखो इवन सम पीपल एक्चुअली आम कोन आम सोसाइटी रे मटेरियलिज्म और हेडोनिज्म को इक्वली यूज करा हुए लोक माने हो एमती कमेंट करंती कि यार तो कोन बहुत मटेरियलिस्टिक हे छु मटेरियलिज्म इन इटसेल्फ इज नॉट दैट बैड इन फैक्ट इट इज रिक्वायर्ड इन अ कंट्री लाइक इंडिया इन द सेंस कि आमको लोकन को मटेरियल दबार अछि आम पाखरे मटेरियल रो अभाव अछि किछि लोकन पाखरे अधिक अछि किछि लोकन पाखरे कम अछि वी हैव टू बी मटेरियलिस्टिक आम बहुत बेसी स्पिरिचुअलिस्टिक हे परिवा ही नाही ओके गोटे भोकिला लोक को तुम स्पिरिचुअलिटी सिखै परिवा नाही and amor this is also our moral responsibility ki we should have enough resources distributed equally among people so in that sense materialism is required जदि आम घरे एसी अछि आमे काहे कि चाहिबा कि किछ लोकन घरे एसी न रहु तांको घरे भी एसी ते materialism संगे कोन अछि बट हेडोनिज्म माने कोन हेडोनिज्म होछि यार तो बहुत एक्सेसिव है एबे तुम घरे गोटे एसी अछि तुम टैक्स पेयर मनी रु ब्राइब नै कि तुम सब घरे तुम बाथरूम रे किचन रे भी एसी लगे देला दिस इज एन एग्जांपल ऑफ हेडोनिज्म आर यू एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड सो एथिक्स रो गोटे काम होची कि मटेरियलिज्म को हेडोनिज्म आडो को जुवा को दबा नाही सो मटेरियल एंड अनदर अदर benefits कोन हो दिस विल आल्सो लीड टू रीडिस्ट्रीब्यूशन अमंग पीपल when a society in general will be more ethical, then resources will be better distributed among the people. For example, think of many, again, the Scandinavian countries. ଆମେ କାହିଁ ବାର ବାର ୟାର example ଦଉଛେ? Because not only they are developed, they are also more ethical societies. Level of corruption, if you see, very very low. ଗୋଟେ transparency international ର ଗୋଟେ index ବାହାରେ, corruption, perception of corruption index, okay, PCI. If you see in that index, India is very very low, ବହୁତ ତଳେ ଅଛି. Topmost countries are always, almost always, they are Scandinavian countries. That means actually this is an objective measure of level of ethics in a society. ହଁ କି ନାହିଁ? ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ countryର କେତେ level ର ethical ସେମାନେ, ତାର ଜାଣିବାକୁ ଗୋଟେ objective measure ଏଇଥିରୁ ଜଣା ପଡୁଛି କି ନାହିଁ? Because that will get reflected in corruption. I'm not saying that corruption is the only thing, but the point is to what level a country is ethical or not. This is one way in which we can take a sample. Now, if you see, for example, in Scandinavian countries, what is the level of material resources in the country? Almost every ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ ମାନେ material resources ଟା ବହୁତ ଭଲ ୱେରେ distribute ହେଇଯାଏ. ଆମ ଦେଶରେ ଯେମିତିଆ ବହୁତ inequality ଅଛି, କିଛି ଲୋକ ବହୁତ rich ଅଛନ୍ତି, କିଛି ଲୋକ ବହୁତ poor ଅଛି, that will not happen in Scandinavian country. Some people might be rich, but it will not happen कि बहुत ମାନେ କିଛି କମ ଲୋକ ବହୁତ rich ଅଛନ୍ତି ଆଉ ବହୁତ ଲୋକ ବହୁତ poor ଅଛନ୍ତି. That will not happen. That is what we are trying to say. So this will also indirectly also lead to welfare. जो लोग माने specifically Scandinavian countries से suppose they are physically handicapped, suppose for any other reason they are unable to work, the government also provides welfare measures to them. तांको किसी welfare checks मिले at the end of the month, है ना? कि because you are for some reason you are not able to work for something. So that also ensures कि there is a social security net for the people. Social security तांको ପାଇଁ ଅଛି. तो यार भी से inequality equality inequality କଥା ଆମେ होती कि inequality को ଗୋଟେ ଦେଶରେ ହବାକୁ ଦବ ନାହିଁ. इंडिया रे एते inequality काहे की अछि? One of the reasons is कि ଆମ ଦେଶର ethics level of ethics among the people itself is very low. ଯାହା ଯିଏ ପଇସା earn କରି କରି ଚାଲିଲା ସେ बस earn ହିଁ କରି ଚାଲିଲା directly or indirectly. Okay. So take example of one or two companies right now they have become very powerful in the country. Overnight ତାଙ୍କର valuation କେତେ jump କରିଗଲା, ସବୁ project ଏବେ ଦେଖିବ ସବୁ ତାଙ୍କରି ପାଖକୁ ଯାଉଛି. Why? Because maybe somewhere we are lacking ethics. ଗୋଟେ company ଗୋଟେ ଲୋକ କି ଦୁଇ ତିନିଟା ଲୋକ ପାଖକୁ ସବୁ resources କାହିଁକି ଯିବ? Should get equally distributed. Anyway, let's not go into politics. Then another point is that they will move towards self-actualization. ଏଇଟା ଆମେ discuss କରିଥିଲେ ମାସ୍ଲୋଙ୍କ theory ରେ, ଏମିତି ଗୋଟେ pyramid କରିଥିଲେ different levels of need, ହେଲା? ତ ଏଇଟା କ'ଣ, ଯେତେ ଆମେ ethical ହବା ଆମେ ସେତେ ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ ତଳୁ ଉପର ଆଡକୁ move କରିବା. ଏଇଟା ଆମେ discuss କରିଥିଲା physical need, physiological need, safety need, love and belongingness, ଏସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ଥିଲା. Final point ଥିଲା self-actualization, which is the realization of the individual's full potential. ଆମର full potential ଯାହାର ଅଛି ସେଟାକୁ realize କରିବାଟା ହଉଛି self-actualization. So, can a person be realize his full potential or become self-actualized without being ethical? Without being ethical, that person can be rich, that person can be successful, but that person cannot be a self-actualized person or full potential को reach करे. आमे कहे कि ये लोग तारा full potential reach कर पारी नहीं. Okay. So only if you माने only if no माने apart from other things you also need to be more ethical. And final point is you need to be माने ethical है राव कौन हवो? Aristotle हमारा friend starting से कहते हैं eudaimonia आसियो. eudaimonia विषय में हमें discuss कर दिले true happiness. For Aristotle a life of माने shallow level ला जो happiness था सेटा real happiness no, real happiness था something deeper. Okay. For example, what Socrates had said, you remember? Socrates कौन कहते related कथा? An unexamined life
It's not worth living.
is not worth living. Very good. So ethics will help us to examine our life. That is the point. Now let us come to the next part, social well-being. Social well-being ethics can be help for you. An ethical society will be more conducive to human development and happiness. Okay. We are not saying ki ethics will directly lead to development. What we are saying ki ethics will create a society or an environment in which you are more likely to be lead towards more development. यार एग्जांपल केमती है ना, बहुत सिंपल जिनसे देखो, इवन इफ यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट इकोनॉमिक बेनिफिट, चलो मु बोधे इकोनॉमिक बेनिफिट कथा भी लिखी जहां तळे अछि. इफ यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट इवन अबाउट इकोनॉमिक बेनिफिट, नाउ यू विल से कि सर आमे एथिकल हेले इकोनॉमिक केमते डेवलप करियो. थिंक अबाउट वेरी बेसिक थिंग्स. if you are ethical, you are simply paying your tax or not. टैक्स पेमेंट ठीक से जो को माने करिवेनी, टैक्स अवॉइडेंस को माने करिए, विजय माल्या टाइप लोक माने करिए, व्हाई? बिकॉज़ दे आर अनएथिकल. इफ यू आर नॉट पेइंग टैक्स देन कंट्री रो रिसोर्स कोन अछि, रिसोर्सेस ओडा कमी जो, रिसोर्स जदी कम ही जो ताको हमें डेवलपमेंट केमती यूज करिया. It's a very simple equation, one of the equations. There are many other arguments also. Okay. So आमे जितना society टा बेसी ethical हो, it is likely that it will create a more conducive society or environment which will lead to human development, and that in turn again development is likely to turn into more happiness. Again तुमे आमे ये सबु जिनस रे मन रखो, आमे सबु जिनस रे ये जो लिंक टा आछे ना, आमे एटा को डिस्प्यूट कर परिया. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल यू विल से कि सर रिसोर्सेस खाली कोन बढ़िया डेवलपमेंट हो बोली गारंटी अछि ना, तार गारंटी नहीं. तुम कह सर कि डेवलपमेंट हो गले कोन हैप्पीनेस आसी बोली गारंटी अछि. समान गिव एग्जांपल कि सर यूएस रे तो बहुत सुसाइड रेट बहुत हाई अछि, आमे कोन ताको हैप्पीनेस कहया कि जदि सुसाइड हाई अछि त माने कोन हैप्पीनेस नाही, बट डेवलपमेंट अछि कंट्री रे, दैट कैन नॉट बी डिनाइड. त माने गोटे कंट्री रे डेवलपमेंट थाई कि भी हैप्पीनेस कम हेतै पारे. देखो एते डिटेल भितर हम जाउना, बहुत सिंपल कथा भाबो, व्हिच इज मोर लाइकली माने वेयर यू आर मोर लाइकली टू बी हैप्पी. तुम बरमुंडा रे बसी बेसी हैप्पी ही परियो, बट डू यू थिंक, or is it more likely that you are more likely to be happy in New York? Now, some people will say कि sir we are तो self actualized, हमको जोटी पके देले हम सेठी खुश रहे, हमको कुछ मना. The point is कि बरमुंडा रे तुम जोटी बसे 10 टा लोक आसी तुम बदर करियो, at least न्यूयॉर्क रे तो 10 टा लोक आसी तुमको माने बदर करिया के तुमठो किछ चोरी करिया ट्राई करिवे नाही. That is the point, the level of how the level of ethics is impacting our development. Okay. Now if you see the second point, I made huge the growth of economy. Now someone will say कि sir ethics and economy केमती related. These are many of the terms that you can use to show कि okay ethics can also lead to growth of economy. First we'll say stakeholder capitalism. This is a very good term that you can use in GS paper 3. Klaus Schwab. Please Google about this person. Very influential person. He has given this idea, stakeholder capitalism. Stakeholder capitalism कौन ना, क्लॉस श्वाब कहले कि हम ट्रेडिशनल मॉडल ऑफ कैपिटलिज्म टा बहुत एक्सप्लॉइटेटिव यूज. ट्रेडिशनल मॉडल टा जोटा ट्रेडिशनल मॉडल ले कौन ए कैपिटलिज्म कहूची कि तुम जिनस गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज प्रोड्यूस करो, ताको सेल करो, हेतरे बिक्री करी जहां प्रॉफिट पाइला हेतरे तो यू कैन बिकम रिच. बट बाय टेकिंग दिस इनटू द एक्सट्रीम, व्हाट मेनी बिजनेसमैन हैव डन is that they have exploited people. So this has become exploitative capitalism, and this has led to many inequality in the society. Some people, there are uber rich people and there are very poor people. Klaus Schwab says that instead of traditional capitalism we should have something known as stakeholder capitalism. What is the meaning of stakeholder capitalism? से कहले कि आमे कैपिटलिज्म आमे भाबे कि गोटे सोसाइटी रो के स्टेक होल्डर अछन, हु आर द स्टेक होल्डर्स. आमे एगुडा सब डिस्कस करले एंदे तुम डायग्राम करके भाब परियो. For example, not just the businessman or not just the company, the other stakeholders are also the customers, government or some kind of authority, and most importantly here there is also society in general, and they are focusing on this. Klaus Schwab is saying that stakeholder capitalism is something जे कि सबु stakeholder करो maximize करिया को try करियो कौन well being, not profit, well being को maximize करिया को try करियो. तो society रो well being को maximize केमती करियो, आमे समस्त मैक्सिमाइज करियो टिके टिके ट्राई करिया, आमे एमती नहीं खाली आमे हमरो ही बस मैक्सिमाइज करिया प्रॉफिट को. सो दिस विल रिफ्लेक्ट इन मेनी प्रैक्टिसेस व्हिच आर एथिकल. कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस रे इस जिंस तुम लिखियो. फॉर एग्जांपल दे विल से कि आमे यदि सीएसआर कॉर्पोरेट सोशल रिस्पांसिबिलिटी अडॉप्ट करिया नॉर्म्स. इफ यू डोंट नो व्हाट दिस मींस, वेरी सिंपली कॉर्पोरेट सोशल रिस्पांसिबिलिटी और सीएसआर होची सब कंपनी माने तांकर प्रॉफिट रो यूजुअली 2% तांको कुआ हुए कि किसी चैरिटी टाइप रो काम रे दबा को सोशल डेवलपमेंट. सो दैट मनी इज नोन एज कॉर्पोरेट सोशल रिस्पांसिबिलिटी. सो इफ ए बिजनेस कंपनी इज रिसोर्टिंग टू दैट, चलो एबे तो इंडिया रे एटा कंपलसरी ही हिची, बट आगरो ऑप्शन थिला. नाउ वी आर आल्सो लुकिंग आफ्टर द सोसाइटी. बाय बीइंग प्रॉफिटेबल यू आर लुकिंग आफ्टर योर ओन. By providing a good service you are looking for the benefit of your customers. By paying taxes and obeying rules you are maximizing the well-being or benefit of the government also. So business को हमें एमती कंडक्ट करिया कि सब स्टेक होल्डर मानकर well-being maximize habo. This concept is known as stakeholder capitalism. Okay. Similarly आमे कहया कि ethics सेमते हमको हेल्प करियो वेलफेयर रे हेल्प करियो किछि मनी को आमे गरीब लोक दुखी दरिद्र लोकन को दवा डेवलपमेंट रे हेल्प करियो प्रीवियस पॉइंट रे हम देखथिले टैक्स बेस को वाइडन करियो दिस इज द पॉइंट आई वांटेड टू राइट टैक्स बेस को वाइडन करियो माने जो माने आगरो टैक्स दो नथिले टैक्स पेयर्स आगरो किछि दो नथिले बिकॉज़ ऑफ अनएथिकल रीजंस आमे यदि एथिकल हे जाय ताले हम कोन बेसी बेसी लोक टैक्स पेमेंट करिया स्टार्ट करियो जो माने आगरो दो नथिले फॉर सम रीजन लुचौथिले so that will lead to more माने इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ को हेटा लीड करियो कि नहीं and other economic activities generic ones. So this is how ethics will lead to growth of economy. Now think of this point: laws and rules. What is the role of ethics in laws and rules? Can we say that if a society is more ethical, then we will ensure that there is fairness in laws? हम law जो हम तैयारी करछे they should be fair. Political science रे एटा कहंती और पॉलिटी रे एटा कहंती due process of law. You must have read about this. Procedure established by law and due process of law. So we are not talking about procedure established by law, we are talking about due process of law, DPL. DPL कहूची कि not only the law should be made by the competent authority, but also the law itself should be fair or it should be just. So एटा हमें केतळे ensure करेगा तो society itself would be more ethical. But unethical society, you cannot expect that there should have more number of fair laws. Similarly, ethical it is likely तो ये सब जिंस आमे सब कहे all are more likely ये सब जिंस हबो. Ethical it is more likely that there will be equality. Ethical it is more likely that there will be justice, principle of natural justice. हमको सब पॉइंट खाली बाहर करियार अछि. एबे गोटे बहुत ही भलो कांसेप्ट देखो many people would not have thought about this concept कि ethics fills the void left by the law or government. Many times कौन हुए कि लॉ और जहाँ रूल और गवर्नमेंट की जहाँ वेलफेयरिज्म जहाँ भी होची आमे एते लोकंकर भलो पई करूछु बट बेले बेले कौन समस्तंकर हम भलो करि परनो कि जेतिकी लेवल हमको दरकार एड्रेस होवा कथा गोटे इश्यू सेतिकी लेवल हेई पारे नै सेठी चैरिटी काम करे तो कथा होची चैरिटी टा कोठु आसला चैरिटी टा आसला बिकॉज़ ऑफ एथिकलिटी और एथिक्स ऑफ पीपल लोकंकर लोक एथिकल हबारु चैरिटी भी देले फॉर एग्जांपल इन आवर सोसाइटी the government is supposed to take care of the poor people but government कोन सब poor people मानकर केयर करि पार नाही ताको भीतर किछि लोक they are forced to come to us in bus stands railways all of these things train आसी जो माने मागु छन ताको भीतर किछि लोक genuinely भी मागु छन why because ताको पाखरे welfare schemes गुडा पहुंच पार नाही तन सेठी जदी लोकन पाखरे ethics थिबो they will help those people this is the argument कि जोठी void create हिची जोठी law नाही absent अछि और government नाही जोठी किछि पब्लिक प्रोविजन नहीं सेठी एथिक्स हमको हेल्प करूची इट इज नॉट जस्ट अबाउट लॉ एंड गवर्नमेंट यू कैन गिव एन नंबर ऑफ एग्जांपल्स ऑफ सिचुएशंस जो सिचुएशंस रे आउ किछि नथिला से सिचुएशन रे लोकंकर एथिक्स पई केते लोकंकर जीवन बंची यू कैन गिव एग्जांपल ऑफ सोनू सूद नाउ ही हेल्प्ड अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल इन कोविड-19 डिड ही नॉट फील अ void left by the law or government yes government पाखरे एते रिसोर्सेस नथला से माने इमीडिएटली रेस्पोंड करि पारले नाही because they were also overwhelmed. But at that time, one person who had a good sense of morality, or at least that is what we infer. Okay. Some people also said other things. Chalo, we are not going to go into that. We'll say कि because we feel that this person had more माने moral reasoning तार भलो थिला कि कोन थिला जाहो he helped a lot of people during COVID-19 and that was needed also. सेतला गोटे void थिला जोडा गवर्नमेंट सेटा फिल अप करि पार नथला and he was able to fill up to some extent. Okay. Similarly, you see जे गोटे ethical society जेतला हवा सेतला governance it is likely that the governance will also become more ethical and when a governance will become more ethical then popular trust in the institutions and processes will increase. This is the argument. कौन पाई increase करियो because society is ethical governance is ethical तेणु लोक माने believe करिवे ना governance गोटे भलो डेमोक्रेसी केतले आसियो जेतले डेमोक्रेसी रे एक्चुअली एथिकल लोक माने थिबे एथिकल लीडर्स थिबे सेतले हम से डेमोक्रेसी रे कॉन्फिडेंस बढ़ियो लोकंकर इफ फॉर एग्जांपल थिंक ऑफ वन थिंग मते गोटे कथा को बहुत बेले जो ईवीएम हैकिंग कथा कुआ होछ चलो गवर्नमेंट एटा होउची कि नहीं तो इट्स अ सेपरेट मैटर, मे बी एटा हो नहीं, आई डोंट नो. But now tell me, suppose one government is there, suppose ये previous government UPA government भी थिला, तांका पाखरे सबू थिला, पुलिस थिला, soldier, they were all under the government or not, civilian government under ही सेवन थिले. तो what was stopping this government from rigging the elections to such an extent कि ସେମାନେ ସବୁ ବର୍ଷ ପରେ ସେମାନେ ଇଲେକ୍ସନ ଜିତି ଜିତି ଚାଲିବେ, ଯେମିତି କିଛି କଣ୍ଟ୍ରିରେ ହୁଏ ନା, କିଛି ଆଫ୍ରିକାନ କଣ୍ଟ୍ରିଜରେ ବି ହୁଏ ସେମିତି. ଆମ କଣ୍ଟ୍ରିରେ କାହିଁକି ଏଇ ଜିନିଷ ହେଇପାରୁନାହିଁ? एंड ଏଇଟା ହେଲେ କଣ ଅସୁବିଧା ହବ? कैन यू थिंक अबाउट इट? सपोज वन गवर्नमेंट इज डूइंग व्हाट, ସେମାନେ ପୁରା रिगिंग କରିକି ଇଭିଏम ହ୍ୟାକ୍ ତ ଛାଡ, ସେମାନେ ସବୁ ହ୍ୟାକ୍ କରିଦେଇକି ଦେଖିଲେ 100% ଭୋଟ ସବୁ ଲୋକମାନେ ଆମକୁ ହିଁ ଭୋଟ ଦେଇଛନ୍ତି. व्हाट विल हैपन आफ्टरवर्ड्स? थिंक एंड टेल मी. एनीवन?
Sir, it will be a sham election.
sham election? ହଁ ତ ହେଲେ କଣ ହେଲା? sham election ହଉ, ସେମାନେ ପାୱାରରେ ରହିବେ ନା,
Sir,
ତ ସେମାନେ କାହିଁକି ଏ କାମ କରୁନାହାନ୍ତି? यस,
public trust erosion.
पब्लिक ट्रस्ट इरोजन हेले कौन हो से पचारे.
Rebel against the government.
वेरी गुड, दैट वाज व्हाट आई वाज गोइंग टू, माने आई वाज एक्सपेक्टिंग. द पॉइंट इज आमे यदि जबरदस्ती एंती इलेक्शन जीति जीवा हला, तापर कोन हो, तापर गवर्नमेंट आसीगला, माने पावर पुणी धर आसीगले, तापर से माने गोटे सपोज नेक्स्ट दिन गोटे लॉ बाहर करिवे और रूल बाहर करिवे कि काली ठारू कोन समस्त मास्क पिंधिया नेसेसरी. सपोज द प्राइम मिनिस्टर केम एंड सेड दिस, लोक माने सुनिवे कि तांक कथा. 90% लोक माने तांको गाली देवे, तांको कहे कि तुमे हमको एक कथा कहयो किए, तुमे तो एक्चुअली रियल रे जिति के आसी ना हो ना, तुमे तो रिगिंग करके आसछो, तुमे हमको एक कथा कहयो कि आमे तुम कथा काई सुनिबो. Is there this tendency or not? If remember, if any government does not come to power free and fair way, ସବୁ इलेक्शन रे टिके टिके डिस्प्यूट रहबो, दैट्स अ सेपरेट मैटर. समस्त हारी गला परे तांको भितरु पॉलिटिकल पार्टी आजकल एमती ही से माने कहे कि आज्ञा एटा तो रिगिंग हेतला, सब हेतला. बट ओवरऑल पीपल नो दैट फ्री एंड फेयर होची, एते सारा जो मेकानिज्म अछि, जदि एते रिगिंग होथांता ताले एते सारा मेकानिज्म नथांता स्टार्टिंग रे. सो दैट मीन्स ओवरऑल फ्री एंड फेयर इलेक्शन हम देश रे होची. ये एते ऑब्जेक्शन करू जहा करू, दिस इज व्हाट आई आल्सो बिलीव एंड मोस्ट पीपल आल्सो बिलीव. ओके, एटा होची बोली तापर जो गवर्नमेंट पावर को आसुची, ସେମାନେ ଯାହା ଲ ରୁଲ ଯାହା ବାହାର କରୁଛନ୍ତି, ଲୋକମାନେ ସେଟା ଖରାପ ଭାବିଲେ ବି ତାକୁ ଗ୍ରହଣ କରିବାକୁ ବାଧ୍ୟ ହଉଛନ୍ତି. The reason is that at the back of their mind they understand that it is a legitimate government. These are the terms you are going to use. That means जो legitimacy ଟା ଆସିବ, that will only come when there is popular trust. ତମେ କାଲି ଜବରଦସ୍ତି ଯଦି सीएम ऑफिस को हाईजैक କରିକି सेठू ऑर्डर इश्यू करिवो तुम नाम रे, ओके, सपोज यू आर इश्यूइंग कि फ्रॉम टुमारो ऑनवर्ड्स आउ फ्री चावल किछि नाही, signed by order CM Devchandan. Are people going to accept it? No one will accept it. Why? Because you have not come to power through legitimate means. This is the issue. Therefore, that means that an ethical society, when it leads to ethical governance, that will, on the other hand, that will lead to popular trust. And যদি popular trust ନାହିଁ, ତା ମାନେ ହଉଛି ତା ମାନେ କିଛି ଗୋଟେ unethical ଜିନିଷ ଅଛି. ପଏଣ୍ଟ ଟା ବୁଝିପାରୁଛ? ଯଦି popular trust ନାହିଁ, ତା ମାନେ କିଛି ଗୋଟେ unethical ଜିନିଷ ଗୋଟେ ହେଇଛି. Okay. Similarly, you see in the next point, it acts as a moral okay, এটা individual under ଆସିବ. ଏ ଦିଟା ମୁଁ ଏପଟ ସେପଟ କରିଦେଇଛି. individual well-being under ଏଟା ଆସିବ. ଏଟା ତମର ଆସିଯିବ କାହା under ଆସିବ? ଏଟା ଆସିବ ethical dilemma under ରେ ବି sub category under ରେ ଆସିବ. It also acts as a moral compass. When even when no one else is watching, there are some people called good Samaritans. ଯୋଉମାନେ accident ରେ for example ଆସିକି ଲୋକଙ୍କୁ help କରନ୍ତି. They are called good Samaritans. तो ସେମାନେ କାହିଁକି ହେଲ୍ପ କରନ୍ତି? ବିକଜ ଅଫ ସମ୍ କାଇଣ୍ଡ ଅଫ ମୋରାଲ କମ୍ପାସ. ମୋରାଲ କମ୍ପାସ ଇନ ଦ ସେନ୍ସ କି ଯେମିତି କମ୍ପାସ ଗୋଟେ ସର୍ଟେନ ନର୍ଥ ସାଉଥ ଡିରେକ୍ସନ ଦେଖାଏ, ସେମିତି ମୋରାଲ କମ୍ପାସ ୟୁଜୁଆଲି ଆମର କନସାଇନ୍ସ କୁ କୁହାଯାଏ ମୋରାଲ କମ୍ପାସ. ଆମ କନସାଇନ୍ସ ହଉଛି ଏମିତିଆ ଜିନିଷ ଯୋଉଟା କି ସବୁବେଳେ ତମକୁ କହିବ କି ତମକୁ ଏଇ ଆକ୍ସନ ନବାଟା ଠିକ. ଏଣ୍ଡ ଏଇ କନସାଇନ୍ସ ଟା କୋଉଠୁ ଆସିଲା? ଏଥିକ୍ସ ଯୋଗୁ ଆସିଲା. ଓକେ, and finally this is also part of social well-being. It facilitates the coexistence of different sections of people. Very very important. Coexistence माने different people can stay together peacefully. जदि unethical practices को allow करा हबो ता लोक माने peacefully रहि परिए नहीं, riots ही जो different issue ही जो, and हुए भी riots काई हुए unethical लोगों को action काई हुए. So ethics indirectly is also promoting social well-being, or you can say social cohesion. Social cohesion ro one of the main ingredient is level of what is the level of ethics in a society. तमे दुईटा क्वेश्चन ने एते सारा जिंस डिस्कस कलु दिस इज आल्सो पार्ट ऑफ द एसेंस ऑफ एथिक्स कहार एथे डाउट अछि यदि पचार एनी डाउट सो फार एनी डाउट्स नो हेलो एम आई ऑडिबल
सर
Yes,
एग्जाम
sir,
रे
you are
एमती
audible.
बुलेट
No doubts.
सॉरी
सर एग्जाम रे एमती बुलेट पॉइंट रे सब लेखिक आसीबो
हाँ एग्जाम रे बहुत एक्सेसिव देखो एथिक्स रे बहुत ही एक्सेसिव बुलेट पॉइंट करबनी जीएस वाला पूरा 100% जीएस वाला करबनी गोटे बुलेट पॉइंट लिखी ता तळे एटलीस्ट गोटे लाइन लिखियो ओके दैट इज द पॉइंट पूरा 100% कॉपी करियो नाही जीएस रे जेमते करूछ चलो हमर तो डेली आंसर राइटिंग क्लास भी होची ना सो वी विल डिस्कस अबाउट दैट आल्सो ठीक अछि डोंट वरी
सर
हैंग ऑन अ
एवरी
सेकंड
सोर्सेस रे काउंटर आर्गुमेंट दबा माने नेसेसरी रहबो कि खाली पॉजिटिव भी
ना
लिखले
ना
चलबो
सब बेले मु कते कहली कि काउंटर आर्गुमेंट दो बेले तो तुमको आर्गुमेंट काउंटर आर्गुमेंट भी पचारिबनी जेमिति एई सेकंड क्वेश्चन टा देखो सेकंड क्वेश्चन टा ओनली थिला कि एथिक्स केमिति हमरो सोशल और इंडिविजुअल वेलबीइंग को कंट्रीब्यूट करे लेखो बोली ओके कि कोन यूजेस ऑफ एथिक्स कोन बोली सेते तुम के आर्गुमेंट करे कोना आर्गुमेंटेटिव कंटेंट आसे तो आर्गुमेंट करियो जेतले आर्गुमेंट ही किछ करियार नै हेतले कोन आर्गुमेंट करियो एथिरे तो किछ आर्ग्यू करियो तुम कोना डायरेक्टली कहउछन मैं लिस्ट आउट कर दियो बुझी होची अच्छा मोर स्क्रीन देखाउछ तुम ना देखाउनी स्क्रीन
No, sir.
देखाउनी बता
No, sir.
नो सर
ओके हैंग ऑन अ सेकंड ओके एबे देखाउ तो
Yes,
एबे
sir.
देखाउची
Yes.
ओके
यस सर
एनी अदर डाउट्स सो फार
Hello. Sir, जो क्वेश्चन दिया है तो माने कंटेंट तो आपण पढ़ाई नथले तो माने जोटा नीचे
हम
लिखला
जानी के
माने
देली
ना
आई
ना
आई
I
वांटेड टू
suppose
सी कि हां हां ठीक
ना
है
ना
को
माय प्रॉब्लम माय क्वेश्चन इज कि एग्जाम रे जदी एमती किछ आसला आमे एमती बहुत जेनेरिक पॉइंट एमती लिखि के आसलो किछ भी एमती हाई फाई वर्ड नहीं बट डिमांड को हम सैटिस्फाई कलु तो सेइतरे माने केते माने मार्क डिफरेंस आसियो
ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड एटा को भी तुम हायरार्की रे भाग परियो फर्स्ट कथा हला किछि पिला जो माने डिमांड को ही मीट करियोनी समाने बहुत ही लो मार्क पाइबे सेकंड कथा हला तुम डिमांड को मीट करूछो बट डिमांड को मीट करके जेनेरिक पॉइंट लिखछो एज यू आर सेइंग यू विल गेट एवरेज मार्क्स someone else who is meeting the demand as well as has written some specific points who should get more marks obviously this person should get more marks the point is ame not only we are not only building remember we are attitude skill and knowledge ଆମେ ତ ଏବେ ନଲେଜ ପାଠକୁ ପଳେଇ ଆସୁଛୁ ନା ଏବେ ତମକୁ ବହୁତ ସାରା କଣ୍ଟେଣ୍ଟ ମିଳିବ ତୁମେ ଏଇ ନୋଟ ଟାକୁ ରେ ବି ଦେଖ କେତେ କଣ୍ଟେଣ୍ଟ ଅଛି ଏଥିରେ ବହୁତ ସ୍ପେସିଫିକ ଜିନିଷ ଲେଖା ଅଛି ବହୁତ ବେଶୀ ସ୍ପେସିଫିକ ଜିନିଷ ଲେଖା ଅଛି I'm challenging you go and download any PGNIS download କରିକି ଦେଖିଦିଅ material କେତେ ସ୍ପେସିଫିକ କଣ୍ଟେଣ୍ଟ ତାର each and every point ରେ ଅଛି you just let me know ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ ପେଜ ରେ ଏତେ ସାରା ପଏଣ୍ଟ ପଢୁଛେ ଏମାନେ no one of them will mention Richard Dawkins memes none will have points like for example ଆମେ କଣ କଲେ ରୁଷ କଥା ଯୋଉ କଥା ହେଲେ କାହା ପାଖରେ ଏସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ନାହିଁ evolutionary perspective କେହି ଲେଖି ନାହାନ୍ତି ହେଲା so you are getting enough my point is not only you are talking about skill ना ତମେ କହିଲେ କି ଯଦି ଆମକୁ ଜଣା ନାହିଁ ଆମେ ଡିମାଣ୍ଡ ମିଟ କରି ଜେନେରିକ ଲିଖିଲେ ମୁଁ କହୁଛି ତ ସେଇଟା ତ ଯୋଉ କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚନ ତୁମକୁ କିଛି ଆସୁନଥିବ ସେ ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ କରିବ କିଛି କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚନ ମ୍ୟାକ୍ସିମମ୍ ଜିନିଷ ତ ତମକୁ ଆସୁଥିବ ଯୋଉ କ୍ଲାସ ରେ ପଢା ହଉଛି ସେଥିରୁ ଡାଇରେକ୍ଟ ସଲ୍ଭ ହେଇଯିବ ତୁମେ ତ ବ୍ୟସ୍ତ
yes
କାହିଁ
yes
ହଉଛ ଆମର ତ କଣ୍ଟେଣ୍ଟ
yes
ବି ମିଳୁଛି ନା ସ୍ପେସିଫିକ କଣ୍ଟେଣ୍ଟ ଏନି ଅଦର ଡାଉଟ୍ or else today we are moving towards this part okay philosophical foundations of ethics ଆଜି ଆମର actually ଏଇଠୁ start କରିବାର ଥିଲା but ମୁଁ ଭାବିଲି କି ତୁମକୁ ବୁଝେଇ ଦିଏ ପୁରା entire ଜିନିଷଟା ତାର ମାନେ ethics ର essence ଟା କଣ now this
सर
will also many of these points will also make sense yes someone else was asking
सर मैं एथिक्स के आंसर का पैराग्राफ पे छोटे छोटे पैराग्राफ लिखी ना सर बुलेट मैंने पॉइंट पूरा देके लिखी दे भाबो
depends on the question देखो ଯଦି question ରେ ତୁମକୁ ଦେଖ ଏଥିରେ କେମିତି strategize କରିବ suppose ତୁମେ ଆମେ answer writing ରେ by the way କିଛି କିଛି point କଥା ବି ହେଇଥିବ did I not say କି ଯୋଉ question ତମ ପାଖରେ enough content ଅଛି ସେଥିରେ ତମେ ବହୁତ ସାରା different bullet point ଲେଖିଦିଅ ନା ବହୁତ ସାରା dimension ସେଥିରେ ଆସିଯିବ examiner will be happy डोंट थिंक दैट जेनेरिक किसी पॉइंट रे भी तुमको एक्सप्लेन करिया पड़िया से किसी एक्सप्लेन करिया दरकार नहीं स्पेसिफिक किसी जिंस लेक्चर यू हैव टू राइट अ फ्यू वर्ड्स सपोज यू हैव रिटन अबाउट डिवाइन लॉ गिवर one line लिखी दो that there cannot be a law without sorry, there cannot be law without a law giver ଏଇ ଭଳିଆ ମାନେ ଛୋଟ ଛୋଟ ବୁଲେଟ ପଏଣ୍ଟ ତଳେ ଗୋଟେ ସିଙ୍ଗଲ ଲାइन ଏଇ ଭଳିଆ अदरवाइज जोटी तुम पाखे कंटेंट टोटाली नाही इन द सेंस कि बहुत बेसी टोटाली तो बेसी जिनस नाही तुम पाखे सेठी तुम पैसेज रे लिख ओके बिकॉज कथा तुमको पेपर भी टिके भरियार अछि ना तुम स्पेसिफिक कंटेंट नाही देखो बुलेट पॉइंट आम केतेबेले लिखु बुलेट पॉइंट सेतेबेले लिखु जेतेबेले आम पाखे एनफ नॉलेज अछि मींस एनफ कंटेंट अछि किंतु सब पॉइंट को आम एक्सप्लेन करिया को हमर टाइम नहीं कि स्पेस नहीं तो आम कोन करिया बहुत सारा डायमेंशन को बस मेंशन कर देई जीवा एंड एग्जामिनर विल अंडरस्टैंड कि ओके दिस पर्सन नोज इट सब जिनस एक्सप्लेन करिया दरकार नहीं पारा आम केतेबेले लिखिया जेतेबेले आम पाखे कंटेंट बेसी नहीं आम जिनस को एक्सप्लेन करि करि पूरा तुम सान बेले देखी थो कि एसे तुमको लिखा दिया तुम जानिछ यदि तो बहुत भल से लिखिपार न जानी यदि तो विषय वर्णना कर ऑटोबायोग्राफी ऑफ ए काउ माय नेम इज काउ आई एम वेरी गुड बीइंग आई हैव 4 legs यही भाया सब लिख तो से भाया जिन कौट लिखे जो तुम कंटेंट ना ये सब किसी रूल ना वी आर ऑल मेकिंग रूल्स ऑफ थंब रूल ही आम तैयारी कर इन द सेंस कि केमी आम मार्क टू मैक्सिमाइज कर पारिया एंड अदर एस्पेक्ट इज कि आम कि टाइमली सब जिन कंप्लीट कर पारिया एगुड़ा तो आम ऑब्जेक्टिव ना एनी अदर क्वेश्चन okay anyway I think we should move on to this point टिके start करके हमें end करिया so this is a very important part of our discussion sorry part of our entire subject philosophical foundations philosophical foundation हमें briefly discuss करथिले this is the entire foundation on the basis of which the subject itself depends means different way of moral reasoning करिसंते different philosophers or moral thinkers moral thinker भी पाव so moral thinkers from around the world including India what they have argued on the basis of that our ethics as a study ethics as a discipline has developed so first school of thought or first philosophy को कुहा हुए moral absolutism what is the meaning of this moral absolutism देखो एटा ए टर्म आछि absolute absolute माने something which is rigid which is fixed तो जेतेबेले तुमर moral standard गुडा और ethical standard गुडा चलो एटा कोडे दो कौन अछि I don't know what happened ଯେତେବେଳେ ତମର moral standard ଗୁଡା ବହୁତ ହି absolute or rigid or fixed ହେଇଯିବ ସେତେବେଳେ ତାକୁ କୁହାହବ moral absolutism means ତମେ କହିବ କି ମୁଁ ତ କହୁଛି killing is bad ତ ମୁଁ କହୁଛି killing is bad ମାନେ ସବୁ କେସ ରେ killing is bad ମୁଁ ଆଉ କିଛି ଶୁଣିବି ନାହିଁ କୋଉ circumstances ରେ କଣ ହେଇଛି ମୁଁ କହିବି if you have killed someone means you are unethical so this kind of thinking this kind of rigidity in moral reasoning ତାର ଗୋଟେ ନାମ ହଉଛି moral absolutism and what this means कि सेमाने ताले माने कोन करे एब्सोल्यूट आमे केतेबे कहया जेतेबे हमर स्टैंडर्ड गुडा फिक्स ହେଇଯିବ स्टैंडर्ड फिक्स ହେଇଯିବ माने कोन कहा ऊपर फिक्स हो राइट और रॉन्ग भितर फिक्स हो तो आमे कहया किछि जिंस तो सब बेले राइट किछि जिंस तो सब बेले रॉन्ग ओके हम माने आर यू एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड आमे फ्लेक्सिबल नो टोटली so these people are saying कि some actions or choices are inherently wrong or right you can also say inherently wrong or right regardless of the society or community cultural differences and situations this is very important कौन सिचुएशन में कौन हला हमको किसी फर्क पड़े जदी हला तो एटा ठीक कि भूल so this you can understand that this means that for them the means is more important than end means is more important than end माने से action itself विषय को होची एठी means माने होची action end माने होची goal so हमें कहया कि तुम गोल कौन होची हमको किसी फर्क पड़े से action टा itself ठीक कि भूल एटा हम डिसाइड कर सारछु आगु so that means the end does not justify mean and if you understand it then Kant's deontological ethics or categorical imperative is also a kind of moral absolutism we can argue that one type of such example ameta by the way we are going to study this in detail later right now we are just trying to understand what is the meaning of moral absolutism now try to understand I had taken one very nice example देखो कई भी एग्जाम रे इसो एग्जांपल यूजुअली पिला माने लिखियो नाही तुम लिखियो इसो जिंसो बहुत ही बढ़िया मार्क आसियो female genital mutilation I don't know if you have heard about this or not this is a cultural practice. Kichi culture रे अच्छी specifically कि some parts of I think Middle East and some parts of Africa. किछि किछि part रे एटा गोटा cultural practice गोटा अच्छी कौन एमाने करंती at the age of puberty or something, or even sometimes at a very young age, girls ମାନଙ୍କର କିଛି genital part କୁ ସେମାନେ mutilate କରିଦିଅନ୍ତି, ମାନେ ତାକୁ knife ରେ ହଉ କି କିଛି ରେ ହଉ ସେମାନେ ତାକୁ କିଛି part କୁ cut କରିଦିଅନ୍ତି. What is the reason? The reason is something related to religious reasons. Okay. The point is that, is this ethical or not? The point is that moral absolutists will say that this is not ethical. Moral absolutist माने कहिबे कि तुमे कौन reason ପାଇଁ କରୁଛ ଆମକୁ କିଛି फरक पड़ेनी, ସେଇ action itself is really bad. Why would you mutilate someone's genitals? Okay. By the way, if you see this, the religious reason is that माने यार बहुत सारा research ହେଇଛି कि is a very regressive kind of mindset. ए mindset रो purpose ହେଲା कि ଯେତେବେଳେ female genital mutilation କରି ଦିଆଯାଏ ତାପରେ women ମାନଙ୍କର sexual urges ଟା କମି ଯାଏ. So and that is seen as a sign of purity. तुम ଭିତରେ sexual urges आसु ନାହିଁ तो you have become more pure. Again, if you see, we had discussed a principle called pollution purity principle. Is this not a kind of pollution purity principle? कि आमे लोकों को भी pollution and pure बोली भाभी कि तांको ऊपर एमिति action नौचे. So moral absolutist माने कहिबे कि भले action तुम को ground रे नौचे doesn't matter. This is categorically wrong. This should not have happened. So you can give this kind of example. है ना? Now ये जो moral absolutist माने एमाने जेमति आमे कहले किछि फिक्स्ड कैटेगरी तांको माइंड रे सेट अछि, किछि जिंस राइट किछि जिंस रॉन्ग. को जिंस राइट और को जिंस रॉन्ग. रॉन्ग तो एमति भाबो किलिंग टाको फॉर एग्जांपल सान कहे कि नहीं एटा रॉन्ग. ओके, फॉर एग्जांपल आउ कोन हे पारे माने किछि एमति सीरियस किछि कैटेगरी अछि जोटा को से माने कहंती एमति सेक्सुअल असॉल्ट. ओके, ऑन व्हिच ग्राउंड यू आर डूइंग डजंट मैटर, दैट इज रॉन्ग. सेमति कोन करेक्ट को वर्च्यू को से माने एम्फसाइज करंती, सैंक्टिटी ऑफ लाइफ, कि लाइफ इज प्रेशियस, honesty, free speech, humanity. These are the values they absolutely endorse or they support. Okay, and if you see who will be the opposite of these people, कि ए लोकंकर opposite मानू कौन कहा, what do you think? Who are moral absolutists? जो माने absolute moral absolutist है तांको opposite लोक माने at least think and भाभी को कि समानकर ideology कौन है.
Relativist.
Very good. Relativist means तांकर opposite हेले जो माने कहिबे कि किछि भी सेमती absolutism, किछि भी absolute नहीं, everything is relative, and that is known as moral relativism. There is no absolute moral code of conduct, it's all relative. सब किछि जिंसा relative. Theory of relativity जेमती सपोज गोटे ट्रेन मूव करूची आ गोटे ट्रेन तुम एठी खाली बस तुमको लागे तुम ट्रेन जेमती ऑपोजिट डायरेक्शन रे मूव करूची. Why? Because of different frame of reference. Similarly, they are saying कि moral गोटे action टा ethical or unethical आमे overall कहि परियानी, it depends on the frame of reference. So it might happen that for some people it is ethical, for some people it is not ethical, and this is the essence of moral relativism. Therefore, so what does this mean? जदि किछि लोकों ପାଇଁ गोटे जिंस ethical हे पारे, किछि लोकों ପାଇଁ unethical हे पारे, that means कि there is no absolute or single moral code of conduct, है ना. तो आमर सिंगल आमे किछि कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट बाहर ही कर परियानी. It all depends on the culture or society. So they are the people who will say कि to each their own, who am I to judge? आमे काहा को जज करिवा नाही. Now if you see what will be the components or parts or characteristics of such moral relativism, first of all they will say कि everything is relative. So there is a difference in the worth of ideas, practices, etc. कि मे भी ही पारे गोटे कल्चर रे जहाँ आइडिया अछि आ गोटे कल्चर हेटा डिफरेंट ही पारे, there can be difference. So see, that is also called cultural differences. आमे देखलु collectivistic culture रे different idea अछि, individualistic culture रे different idea अछि. Collectivistic cultures like India, Japan, individualistic cultures like USA, they can have different ideas of what is moral or what is immoral. Similarly, one of the major attributes of moral relativism is called tolerance. tolerance is one of the liberal values. बहुत सारे liberal values moral relativism में आसियो. Liberals are usually uh, moral relativists. Traditional people are usually moral absolutists. And liberal values ଭିତରେ କଣ ଆସିବ? Tolerance of different ideas, different cultures. Obviously, if they are believing that there can be and there should be differences in worth of ideas and practices, that means they will respect those differences. And sometimes it may also go to the extreme that they will start to defend things which they should not defend. ଏବେ କିଛି ୱେଷ୍ଟର୍ଣ୍ଣ କଣ୍ଟ୍ରିଜରେ ୟୁଏସ୍ ୟୁକେ ଏସବୁ ଜାଗାରେ ଦେଖିବ ବହୁତ ଏମିତିଆ ଚାଲିଛି ଯୋଉମାନେ ପୁରା ଏକ୍ସଟ୍ରିମ ଲେଫ୍ଟିଷ୍ଟ କିଛି ଅଛନ୍ତି, they will not say anything bad about other cultures, even if some of the other cultural practices which might be regressive. Suppose there is one religious community or maybe ethnic community which is practicing some kind of thing which is regressive for women. Suppose one community is there, ସେ କହୁଛି ଆମର ଝିଅ ମାନେ ତ କେହି ପଢିବାକୁ ଯିବେନି, ଘରେ ରହିବେ, ତ moral absolutists ମାନେ ତାକୁ ଅପୋଜ କରିବେ, ତାଙ୍କୁ କହିକି ତାଙ୍କୁ କାହିଁ ଛାଡୁନ, some actions are categorically wrong, ତମେ ଯଦି women ମାନଙ୍କୁ ବାହାରକୁ ଛାଡୁନ, that is categorically wrong. But ଏଇ ଯୋଉ relativists ମାନେ ଥିବେ ସେମାନେ କହିକି who are we to judge, our cultural practice କି ଆମେ women ମାନଙ୍କୁ ଛାଡିବା ବାହାରୁ, ତାଙ୍କର cultural practices କି ସେମାନେ ଛାଡିବେନି, ତ let them do. Now can you see that ମାନେ difficulty in this? The point is sometimes moral absolutists should be correct, or we can judge that they are more likely to be more ethical. Sometimes the relativists are more likely to be more ethical. My suggestion to you that you should not have any kind of such ism. କିଛି ବି ism नहीं कहनी कि ମୁଁ moral absolutist और ମୁଁ moral relativist. You should, if anyone asks you whether you are moral absolutist or relativist, ତମେ କହିବ କି it depends on the case. ମୁଁ ସବୁବେଳେ କହିବି କି ମୁଁ case by case basis ରେ decide କରିବି. ହେଇପାରେ in some case I would like to be a moral absolutist, in some other case I would like to be a relativist. Okay? କେବେ ବି ନିଜକୁ ଗୋଟେ tag ଦବ ନାହିଁ. Now यार counter argument कौन ହେଇପାରେ? ଆମେ କଣ କହିକି କହିବା କି ନାଇଁ moral relativism is not a good thing? ଏଇଟା ଆମେ କହିବା କି ଦେଖ moral relativism ରେ ଏଇ କଥା କୁହାଯାଏ କି when in Rome do as Romans do. ଆମେ ରୋମ କୁ ଯାଇଛେ ଯଦି ରୋମାନ୍ସ ମାନେ ଯେମିତି କରୁଛନ୍ତି ଆମେ ସେଇଟା କରିବା. That is what means ନା multiculturalism କଣ? ଆମେ different culture କୁ allow କରୁଛୁ to coexist as well as we are cultural differences କୁ ଆମେ endorse କରୁଛୁ, support କରୁଛୁ. So we are saying କି ଯଦି ରୋମ ରେ ରୋମାନ ମାନେ କିଛି different way ରେ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ତ ଆମେ ବି ସେଇଆ କରିବା, କିଛି ଅସୁବିଧା ନାହିଁ. But suppose the Romans are doing some things that we don't approve. ଯଦି ରୋମାନ ମାନେ ତା ଭିତରୁ ଗୋଟେ ଦୁଇଟା ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିସ ଆମକୁ ଠିକ ଲାଗିଲା ନାହିଁ, ତାହେଲେ ବି କଣ ଆଖି ବୁଜିଦବା ଆମେ ତାକୁ? Now what is an example for that? ଦେଖ moral relativism ର କେମିତି example ହେଇପାରେ? Indian social norms କୁ ଏବେ ଦେଖ, ଆମେ ଯୋଉ discuss କରୁଥିଲେ Indian standard time, ଯୋଉଟା ମଜାକରେ କୁହାଯାଏ IST. Indian standard time କଣ? ଆମେ ସବୁବେଳେ lack of punctuality, ସବୁବେଳେ late ରେ ଯାଇକି ପହଞ୍ଚିବା. Now someone will say କି ଦେଖ moral relativist ମାନେ କଣ କହିବେ? Relativist ମାନେ କହିବେ यार ଏଇଟା ତ ତାଙ୍କର cultural value, ଏଇଟା ତ ତାଙ୍କର ସେମାନେ ତ ସେମିତିଆ ହିଁ, who are we to judge? But tell me, is this ethical or not? This is not ethical. Not being punctual should not be an ethical value. So here you cannot, ମାନେ moral relativism ର argument ଟା କାମ ଦଉନାହିଁ. Lack of hygiene, spitting in public places. Someone is spitting in, Indian is spitting in public place, and foreigner will come and say କି ଏଇ ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ କରୁଛ ତୁମକୁ ଖରାପ ଲାଗୁନି, ତୁମ ନିଜ ଦେଶକୁ ଅପରିଷ୍କାର କରୁଛ? ସେଠି ସାଇଡ୍ ରେ ଯିଏ moral relativist ଥିବ ସେ କହିବ କି ଭାଇ ଦେଖ everything is relative. ତମେ ୟୁଏସ୍ ରେ ସବୁ କ୍ଲିନ୍ ଅଛି because that is your culture. India is not clean because it is part of India's culture. Should that be the case? Point is that ଏଇଭଳିଆ argument କରିବା କଥା ନୁହେଁ. That means this is a counter argument to moral relativism, କି ସବୁବେଳେ moral relativism argument ଟା ଠିକ ନୁହଁ. Lack of civic sense. ଆମେ Q ର spelling ଭୁଲ ଅଛି, ଆମେ Q ରେ ମାନେ ଲାଇନ ଆମେ ଛିଡା ହେଇ ପାରୁନାହୁଁ. ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ୍ସ ମାନେ ସବୁବେଳେ ଲାଇନ ଭାଙ୍ଗି ଦିଅନ୍ତି. This is also a standard social norm. ଆମେ କହିବା କି moral relativism support these things? They should not. But the point is there any plus point to moral relativism? Yes, of course. There are many positives about moral relativism. जोटा कि absolutism को problem कौन से सब जगह रे पूरा fixed ହେଇକି ରହିଯିବେ, situation को भी consider करिवे नहीं. At least moral relativists माने situation को consider କରୁଛନ୍ତି. Okay. For example, suppose you might have seen this case, I don't know, that ଗୋଟେ ଶିଖ ଲୋକ US or Canada କୋଉଥିରେ he was somewhere there. Okay. He saw that ମାନେ ସେ ଗୋଟେ river ରେ ଗୋଟେ ଛୋଟ ପିଲାଟା ଭାସି ଯାଉଥିଲା. So what he did was that immediately ସେ ତାଙ୍କ ପଗଡି ଖୋଲିକି से पिलाटा को बंचे देते से पगड़ीटा को रिवर रे पकेकी he was able to draw him or her out and he saved the life. The ethical dilemma he might have faced in that moment was that सिख कल्चर रे कोन कि तुम पगड़ी एमती ओपनली खोली परिबा नाही. You are so mandated to always wear it. Okay, at least in माने पब्लिक जो बाहर को जाए. But he broke that religious code. Religious code जोटा थिला, he broke that. Why? Because he might have understood that in that situation he should not be have been an absolutist. तांको सेटे moral relativist हवार थिला. In the sense कि now he understood that now I should break my religious code because here there is a higher value, ethical value attached, which is sanctity of life. If you see आमे ये सब जिनसे भी discuss करियो. एमती जो ethical development जेतले person मान कर हुए किछि abstract value को आमे principle हिसाब रे नहीं जाओ. And सही basis रे आमे reasoning करू, सही basis रे अन्य norms, rules ये सब जिनसों को भी हम भांगी दी पार. This is also an example. So moral relativists, in other words, they will consider what is the situation before taking decision. But an moral absolutist will not consider the situation. Okay. Are you able to understand, or do you have any doubt? बुझी होची और ना होनी.
Yes, sir.
ठीक अछि. Utilitarianism आज पढ़िया ना, आज बहुत heavy है. Let me know, or else we can wrap it up.
सर काल पढ़िवा
ओ ठीक है. आज बहुत सारा इनफॉरमेशन ओवरलोड हो गया कि बहुत सारा इन्फो एंड कॉन्सेप्ट्स. ठीक है
सर
काली
8टा
पढ़िया.
बेले टिके माने 5 मिनिट गैप देले हमें कैन
ठीक है आई
नेक्स्ट टाइम
अंडरस्टैंड. एक्चुअली व्हाट हैपेंड वाज दैट ମୁଁ ଭାବିଥିଲି ବି 8ଟା ବେଳେ ବ୍ରେକ୍ ଦେବାକୁ, बट बिकॉज आई वाज इन अ फ्लो ତ ମତେ ଲାଗିଲା କି लेट अस ट्राई टू मूव एंड सी केते ही पारुछ. ठीक है, नो इश्यूज. वी विल कंटिन्यू फ्रॉम द नेक्स्ट क्लास. नेक्स्ट एथिक्स क्लास विल बी नेक्स्ट मंडे. ठीक है. Okay, any other doubt, or else we are going to end our class.
सर कालीरा पॉलिटिकल के ना सर.
शुभम दीक्षित सर.
ओके.
Okay, ठीक अछि.
तो तापर
Okay,
जीएस स्टार्ट हो.
हाँ तापर पुणी आमे कोन करिया. तापर आमे after polity again next Monday you have ethics. After that society रो गोटे क्लास बाकी थिला. society आमे तारो next alternative day रे सारि दवा. तापर ठु पुणी next day दिन I think Wednesday again ethics अछि. तापर सो Thursday रो I think we should take up GS3. GS3 topic day जो. For the time being you should also study other subjects also. Optional भी तो संगे संगे पढ़ता हूँ. Okay, ठीक है guys, then we will meet again. Take care.